Ma, what are you doing?
Filling sandbags, Dorothy. There's a hurricane a-coming.
A-coming?
That's right. People only use the when a really big storm is a-coming or a-brewing, so grab a sack and start a-shoveling.
Ma, the weather report said nothing about a hurricane.
Ida Perlberg down at the senior center woke up this morning with a leg cramp. Need I say more?
Yes.
Dorothy, when you get around my age, two things happen. One, you get more intuitive about the weather, and two, corn becomes your enemy.
You're listening to
Y'all are listening to What's Left of the South.
All right, thank you.
Ew. What the hell, man?
You want to try it again?
Listen, man.
Take two. Action.
It's been a long fucking few weeks. Fuck it. Thank you for tuning in to What's Left of the South, the podcast about Southern working class history and current events from leftist perspective. See, I fucking remembered it. This show is brought to you by just fucking existing at this point. Just trying to get through everyday life in the hellscape that is our fucking world right now. Also, the show is this particular episode, we have special sponsors, Harp and the Russian woodpecker, fighting each other to see who's going to produce the more powerful hurricane that's going to destroy us, right? Also, the FEMA camps from the Obama administration. As always, I am your lovable, pleasantly plump, bald host, Nelson, with my lovely co-hosts.
And I have power.
Yeah.
Yay!
Not just indigenous power, but actual power.
My AC's running.
And I'm Mark.
Thanks, Mark. You always leave me out to dry.
Thanks, Mark. You son of a bitch.
I was going to say also pleasantly plump, but with hair, but I felt that was a little mean-spirited.
No, you know what,
So
Mark?
I
That's
didn't say that,
beautiful.
obviously.
That's beautiful, Mark. Hey, you know what? With every injection, the follicles on the top of your head are going to start dying, and you're going to look
I
like
told
me,
you I
brother.
got a gray hair in my beard, bro.
Oh, Lord have mercy. And back
And
once
so
again.
Stem cells are dying.
Oh, shit. And back once again for the second time. Survived the hurricane and is surviving life in Appalachia. Our guest this evening is... Oh, shit.
Chelsea with
Yay!
Rednecks Rising.
Yay!
Can y'all hook me up with Harp as a sponsor? Because I feel like I've earned it at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, we get
Okay,
more
great.
money from the Russian woodpecker, obviously, because we are a mouthpiece of the
What
Kremlin.
does that mean?
Great
Okay.
point.
Okay, Mark, here's your conspiracy lessons for today, right? So I think it's in Alaska. I forgot where the fuck it is.
I
but
think
this is
now they have multiple
multiple
locations.
ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
OG one back when my dad would get those fucking anti-government newsletters in that probably Timothy McVeigh got too. Like, and it was on the back of his toilet, and I would be taking a shit as like a 10-year-old and looking through these and be like, aliens control the government. What the fuck? So this Harp, I think it's in Alaska or somewhere up there, that it's just a radio station. It's like a big fucking thing from the Cold War, I think. And conspiracy theorists believe that it controls the weather and that we can manipulate hurricanes. There's this one scientist my dad likes that apparently
Scientists
him
in quotes.
yeah, quote unquote scientists, right? None of these people have like PhDs or like they have maybe a master's or like they haven't like renewed they haven't updated
Hey,
PhDs.
they
in
went to
forever.
the school of hard
Hey,
knocks.
They
okay?
really did. They went to the
Right.
school of hard
The
knocks,
University
learned from
of
these
Life.
streets. University of Life. They're all Gen Xers. But apparently there is a fringe scientific theory that hurricanes that can be manipulated by Harp, and then I'll get into the Russian woodpecker in a second. They're not caused by low pressure systems that feed off warm water. They're caused by the Earth's magnetic field. And the reason they get like they lose strength as they get closer to the shore is because they start grounding out. And that's why hurricanes dissipate when they go over land. It's not they left warm water. That's like, what everyone fucking knows, and we have data to prove it. It's, their magnetic fields. And that's why they can be manipulated by Harp. And also the Russian woodpecker is like this like dilapidated fucking same thing as Harp. It's like a Cold War radio station, right? It's huge though. This thing's fucking massive. I don't know, like I think it's in like Belarus or like somewhere deep in fucking Siberia. It's like neglected and has like it doesn't work. But
Got like an SCP running around in there.
yeah.
Back rooms.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a literal woodpecker. It's
I had a
literal,
literal
human-sized
For
woodpecker.
my other Gen Zers, I had to jingle the keys so that we'd pay attention by saying some buzzwords.
Anyway,
You know.
so when these stupid conspiracy theorists on TikTok or wherever say like, oh, the government's controlling the weather, that's what they mean. I've been hearing this shit now for like 2 decades. It's not true. Go fuck yourself. So,
But Marjorie Taylor Greene said it.
listen, Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a good person.
That's my congresswoman. Thank you. I live in the 14th district.
Well, isn't she back in Trump's good graces after the Laura Loomer debacle?
Oh my god!
I don't know, bro.
I just want that.
And the guy
back.
running against her, like his only ad has been like, "I'm a farmer. I grew up in Rockmart. Vote for me because we deserve better." It's
Go
like,
Tide.
okay,
Go
dude.
Dogs.
Belt.
Go dogs.
Go Dogs.
We do deserve better.
Yeah, we sure do. She's got that right.
A literal woodpecker from Russia would be better than Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's what I was picturing. It was like just a big woodpecker. Like a thunderbird, but like a woodpecker.
just
Like all of the wings are
wandering
what
around in
cause the
empty-
weather to intensify.
Right.
It's just
Hi,
roaming around
wait.
this big empty radio station.
Who, Kai, was it you? Like, who was saying that? Like, oh, someone was saying that was like, oh yeah, if they could create a hurricane, why are they in like? I don't even know where I'm going with this. It's just like, why would they attack? There's like,
It was not me.
People who are like,
Yeah.
oh, the hurricanes are hitting red states. It was just like, yeah, man, it's not that like, you know,
But
most of the Gulf states
that means that it's
the
a
Republican states.
It's a Democrat-run hurricane machine,
Oh,
which is why no big hurricanes ever hit during a Republican presidency. Not Maria, not Katrina.
Well,
No,
Republicans
Katrina
aren't
was
smart enough to
Andrew was
control that.
92.
And Katrina was Bush. Don't
Oh, right, okay.
Oh my god! But no, that's why I took out New Orleans.
That was the joke,
because
Nelson. That those are big ones that hit under Republicans.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Listen, it's been. We were talking about everything
Yeah,
that's
Mr.
happened.
History teacher.
And Mark is getting muted. Mark is muted. All right. So you son of a bitch. Anyway, we're all talking about like all the fucked up stuff that's happened in our lives. Like I had a mass shooting right around the corner from me. Chelsea survived the horrible hurricane hit Appalachia. Fucking Kai survived Milton. Mark survived Trump. Like it's Mark, I have to ask you to
No,
unmute,
JD Vance. JD Vance came to town.
Yeah, JD Mark's couch is okay after JD Vance came out.
Has anyone
said
asked the
so-so.
couch directly?
Yeah, Mark, tell us how your couch
We
feels.
should.
Unmute.
You
There you go.
muted me.
I did.
Okay. It's fine. He was here like in the middle of the day, which if he's like catering to like working people, weird that you're like doing this at 1 o'clock when like all the like weirdos are out, but that's not your demographic.
Mark, what the
Um,
fuck? Mark's gonna vote for Trump
That's what
now.
someone
y'all.
said on Facebook. Well, I think my uncle voted
Oh
for
yeah,
Trump,
blame it on Facebook.
because he's not taxing overtime or whatever. And my uncle gets like another 40 hours of overtime, so I think he's like doing that. But he did it at this old like broken down mill that they recorded like an episode of The Walking Dead in. So it's weird. It's all weird.
Terminus?
But
Where
there's
the
no
cannibals were?
furniture. No. It was the one where like later in the season with like the military people and like the
Oh,
woman
okay.
that was Daryl's love interest.
And that's because
this
the
is not-
government uses Hollywood to send us messages, okay?
Right. See, Daryl Dixon is gonna come and save us all. It's just there's no furniture stores in the area, so it's all right, but it's still like weird.
Shit.
Also, I guess to prevent people from buying out all his tickets, it made you like purchase them, but when you go into it, they were free.
They did the same
But it
thing
was
when it
like,
came to Asheville. Yeah.
so it's like I guess discouraging people. They're like, well, don't want to pay this money, but I don't know. So I
We had
reserved
to
two tickets
provide all
for
your
at least two other
information and
people.
like, yeah, reserve. You had to like provide all your information to reserve it. I think they were hoping it would
Yeah.
get people. Yeah.
Now he just gets to figure out which house he's gonna come and
Now he
do
just
things with their
spams my
couch.
like text messages.
Hey,
My
human,
couch
this
is
is
mostly
JD Vance.
safe, except for I had a palmetto bug land on me the other day, and it went like in my couch, and so I hope it's dead, but it could come get me any moment. So if you hear like the sounds of death, it was a palmetto bug coming back for revenge. Nelson, do you know
Like
what a palmetto bug
I
is?
know that like up in the foothills where you are, you don't get as many bugs as we do down here in Florida. Mark, if you had any idea what it was actually like living down
No,
here,
bro,
my
we get
God.
palmetto bugs like bad. Like,
Yeah, we do too. Where do you think they come from? Palmettos, which are from Florida.
Yeah, it's
so
a
you did this
Florida
to me,
woods
is what you're saying.
cockroach, Mark. As I looked it up, it's Florida woods cockroach. It's a palmetto
Do you
bug,
think these
Florida.
bugs know borders? Do you
The
think these bugs?
the bugs are anarchists.
Do you think these bugs are like
Moving north into
aware?
North Georgia.
No, bro.
The
Also,
bugs are like
it's
no cops, no borders.
yeah, like
Man,
I don't know.
I
If
get spiders
anarchists
the
were a bug,
size of my
it'd
hand.
be
I get
orange.
palmetto bugs. I get all kinds of because like our
Florida
garage
man.
door doesn't seal all the way. And so they get into the garage, and then the door that goes from the laundry room into the garage is old and sometimes doesn't seal all the way. So they get in through that. So it's just like you walk into that laundry room and you just hear things. That's just
Yeah.
how it is.
I get worms in here because the bottom of the house isn't sealed right.
You live in a
When it rains,
shack
they hardly
attached
come
to
in.
the house.
You in a shed.
You live in a shed, Mark. That's why. Remember that one
Yeah.
guy totally like remember that one guy that complained about us yapping for too long before we
I
got
was
to the
fixing to say,
episode?
isn't this about Chelsea?
I really hope
Isn't this
that
supposed to be
person
about
I
like?
really hope that person still listens to this podcast and gets pissed off every time we just don't go
He
right
probably
into the
doesn't.
content.
And he lives in your mind rent
Well, okay.
free.
I can find a segue from bugs into hurricanes because the ground gets so sodden. Like I'm used to hurricanes down here in Florida. Every time I come over in the fall, we end up getting hurricanes. So the ground gets so sodden that bugs that live in the ground will go higher and into your house to escape the floodwaters. So I had like after Milton, we had like ants everywhere. Fuck. You can like there's like all kinds of bugs that end
I've seen the ants
like in your house.
Yeah.
For us, it was yellow jackets because all the dirt where in the nest where they lived got stirred up, and then they got all pissed off, and they're like, yeah.
Fucking hell. If my house got destroyed, all of a sudden I got attacked by fucking yellow jackets.
I would go
hunt FEMA too.
Yes.
So my recommendation for anybody who's had any of these weather events or you get flooding around your house and all of a sudden you get bugs in your house and you don't know how to get rid of them, and or especially if you have pets and you're worried about using like bug sprays for safety, get diatomaceous earth. It's a white crushed shell. And it will shred their exoskeletons as they walk on it. So it will kill them or like they'll leave the area. So if you have like problems with bugs in your house after flooding, get diatomaceous earth. And you can get it at like Ace Hardware and places like that.
You heard it here, folks. Sponsored by Ace Hardware. Get diatomaceous earth.
Sponsored by diatomaceous earth.
Yeah. The one that we have is food grade because we use it around my mom's cat's food bowl because obviously this is Florida and we get bugs anyway. So we always have a little bit around the cat's food bowl.
That's fucking awesome.
There you go.
Thank you, Kai.
You can also use
life hacks for the end of the world.
Yeah, you can also use Dawn dish soap, but obviously it's like really slippery and sticky, and you might not want like your pets
Can you
around it.
imagine?
So that is
Yeah.
better for.
The dish
My
soap
house
in
is
the water.
I
I
survived
know,
the hurricane.
this sounds like a fucking Wile E. Coyote shit. It's like my house got destroyed. I'm being attacked by yellow jackets, and now I'm slipping on the ground from Dawn dish soap. Obama.
Well, the Dawn
President
dish soap
Trump.
works if you get any bugs around your sink. Because obviously you're going to be washing your dishes in the sink. Just put it around the outside of your sink and it'll stop the bugs from getting into your sink. Look, Florida
Hell
is the
yeah.
apocalypse, all right?
Look, now that we got that, now that we gotten that actually, I'm not gonna lie, the dish soap stuff with the sink is actually, well, that's a good idea. Chelsea, you got hit with we'll go by chronological order.
Right.
Fucking hurricanes.
Let's
Okay,
go into timeline.
Chelsea, you got hit. Well, technically, I'm not. Well, okay, Kai, you weren't in Florida when Milton hit Florida, and then when
Yeah.
wait, where are you?
I was in Florida when the outer bands of Helene came through.
Fuck.
But
so Kai technically got hit by Helene first.
From my perspective, the storm hit the Big Bend area. I'm in Orlando. I am far outside of that, but we got hit with the outer bands. So we did get like outer bands of wind and some rain, and it did take out our power for about a half hour, and our power came back on, but it killed our air conditioning. So we didn't have air conditioning for about a day and a half. And in Florida, when it was like 88 degrees, like that sucks.
That's a death sentence in Florida
That
for
is
sure.
fucking horrible.
Yeah. So like, yeah, we got like a bit of shit here. Like the ground was a bit messy and it wasn't a whole lot of flooding like everybody else got. But yes, so I got hit by Helene first, and then it was Chelsea's turn.
All right, Chelsea, what
Damn it,
we're gonna
I could
tag
have
you
just
in.
kept it down there for a little while.
Right. Why didn't you ask it politely to just stop?
No, like I've said
Mean.
before that like living in Florida and getting hit with these hurricanes over and over again, you get to the point where you're like kind of preying on the downfall of everyone around you. You are hoping that it is hitting anywhere but where you live because you're so used to it. Like
Fuck
you can't be the
Miami.
big you can't be the bigger person and be like, oh well, it's okay if it hits us because it'll save everyone else. Like no, you're just like, damn, I hope it hits Big Bend. Damn, I hope it hits Miami. Damn, I hope it hits anywhere but here.
Panama City is gone.
Well, let me tell you about Helene. That ended any sort of like it's gonna hit someone else other than us because this bitch took out a fourth of the state of North Carolina.
Mhm.
So I like the first few hours after, not hours, the first couple days after Helene, I still was realizing how big it had hit because since I've been an organizer and lived here my whole life, I've just like met people and connected with people and networked with people in basically every county that was impacted like over the course of my life. And so for the first like 3 days, it was just like, holy shit, Madison County got hit too. Like I need to check in on this person. Holy shit, Yancey County got hit too. I need to check in on this person. Boone and Ashe County. And these are places that are like 2.5 hours from where I live. Like it is not like this storm, like it, which is very weird because 2021, we had the opposite experience where it just hit one town in Haywood County, predominantly Canton and Crusoe, Tropical Storm Fred did. And so we had a little bit of experience, but this was like a scale that is so hard to even fathom being here on the ground. Like it's just so like, and it's crazy because we'll go to like each of the counties to like share resources and like supplies that have and labor that has gotten dropped in because some counties are worse off than others. And we'll literally ask like, oh, how are y'all doing out there? And the spectrum goes from like bad off to like totally devastated. And so it's like, oh, well, Haywood County is just kind of bad off. Like, it's not that bad. It's like, oh, well, there's still people without power and there's still, you know, a lot of people without jobs. But then the totally devastated side is where it's like, oh, entire like mountains are gone and towns are gone and like communities are gone. So like next time it's going to be, and North Carolina has 100 counties of state. So we're talking literally a fourth of the state of North Carolina, 23, they're saying, so I guess a little bit less than fourth, counties in the disaster zone. 23 fucking counties. So
fucking
next time
wild.
it's going to be half the state of North Carolina or the whole state of North Carolina. And eventually there will be nowhere to take refuge or pray that it hits next, which is like, kind of it touches on the fact that like Appalachia has often been considered like a climate refuge sort of area. Like people from Florida retire here because Florida is sinking. And we have 4 seasons here, and it's not too cold and it's not too hot. And like people think like, oh, like there's no tornadoes, there's no real earthquakes, etc. So then for it to just be like a huge slap in the face, it's like, actually, it doesn't matter how high up the mountain you run, you're not safe from this reality we've created for ourselves.
Yeah. So like I guess the first question would be like, so that first day, like what happened? Like what was everyone expecting? Like I heard reports of like they were telling people to leave Western North Carolina to go to Eastern North Carolina. And like so what all happened that first day? Like when the storm is hitting? Like what I guess like what were the preparations? Like what were people being told? Were there evacuation orders? Like what the hell was going on?
Good questions. I can only speak for what happened to me in Haywood County. So other counties may have had different approaches and protocol, but like we knew a big storm was coming. We've been through like when Ivan hit, our rivers were flooded. Like we got hit pretty hard. We had seen Tropical Storm Fred like just 3 years ago. So, and a lot of the communities here are colonial settler ancestors settled along the rivers and then built like our towns here literally along the rivers. So entire communities are distinguished by the French Broad River flows through the River Arts District of Asheville. And like that's kind of what Asheville was built up on. And then the Pigeon River here in Haywood County, same thing. Tuckasegee River, where I grew up in Silva. So like every town and every county kind of has a river that defines the community because that's how the communities came to be and like what they based their survival on in the earlier days of this country's um, you know victimized being victimized by colonial imperialism. So but so we've always known like we have 100-year floods. There was a big flood in like 1917, I want to say. There was a big one in like 77. So this is something that like it's not like we are totally unprepared and unfamiliar with the concept of flooding out here. But I think, some of us heard the term catastrophic around the Hurricane Helene projections and like, oh, this impact is going to be catastrophic. But like, how do you quantify that? Like, how do you actually explain to people like, this is what this means is going to possibly happen? And I think, at the very worst, folks were thinking like, okay, well, if you're house or trailer park or whatever is next to the river, then yeah, you should probably get out and evacuate, get to higher ground. But none of us thought the entire fucking communications infrastructure was going to go down. Like none of us fucking thought that I-40 was going to crumble. So, and then, so what happened was, to answer your question, we were hearing these projections and we're thinking like, oh, our ancestors have been through flooding before. Like this is nothing new for us. But it wasn't. So Thursday, it was raining. It had rained leading up to the storm in the days prior. And so what happens with our infrastructure is that like the riverbeds get too full and oversaturated, like you were saying, Kai. And so then when the actual storm touches down and just dumps rain, there's no way for the soil or the trees, et cetera, to retain that. And so everything just gets pushed into the rivers and the tributaries that flow into the rivers. So Thursday is like when the storm is like touching down, and we know that. And the government, the biggest thing before Friday that happened was that they just kind of let us know, like in certain jurisdictions, like Clyde here in Haywood County, they would say, which the river is basically consumed the town of Clyde, but it's less horrible than like in Marshall. But they just said like, oh, we have a siren system at the fire department. If you hear one siren, that means that the flooding is imminent, and like we highly encourage you to get to higher ground. If you hear 2 sirens back to back, that means that we are going around and essentially forcing people to evacuate because it is life threatening at that point. So they kind of like started letting us know like what to pay attention to, but they didn't, again, like no one quantified like this is the possibility of the storm. And so it was Friday at 4 a.m. that we get the like National Weather Service alert to evacuate. So one, if you have a cell phone, two, if your cell phone's on, three, if you're not a deep sleeper, like those are the only ways that you're going to get these notices. I'm super privileged. I live in the third floor of an apartment complex, and it's also like kind of on the hill. But my husband was going to work at 8 a.m. on Friday and went downstairs to like go get in his truck and drive to work, and came back upstairs and was like, first responders are downstairs evacuating the first floor of the apartment building. So we need to decide if we're going to stay or if we're going to go. We live next to Richland Creek, which is one of the tributaries that flows into the Pigeon River eventually. And Richland Creek is typically like, it's a creek. It's not even a river. It typically is like 6 feet wide, maybe 3 feet deep. And I threw on some clothes and like went to go look at it. And Richland Creek, I have videos of it, had to be like ballpark 150 yards wide and easily 20 feet deep. It was all the way up. We have a 7-foot retention wall outside the apartment building, and it was breaching the retention wall, which is already about, I would say, another 8 feet from where the creek usually is. So it was all the way up out of the creek, 8 feet, and then rose like to breach the 7-foot tall retention wall on top of that, and stretched across. And there's like a shopping plaza on the other side of the creek, and it stretched all the way across this plaza, which is like 50, 60 yards, and like was hitting the doors of the stores on the other side. So this tiny baby Richland Creek, where I like walk my dog every day, literally like consume like 100, imagine a football field and a half from a creek. And so, but at that point, so he's like, we need to decide if we're going to stay or if we're going to go. And I'm like, well, we live on the third floor. They're going to tell us to get to higher elevation. Like we might as well just stay put. Like we've got supplies to get through a few days, until the river recedes, and we'll be fine. So that's kind of like, to answer your question, the story of like leading up to the storm and the storm making landfall, like what we expected and kind of what we were told, and the notice that we were given. So I guess between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., if you had wanted to evacuate, then you could. But to give context about North Carolina too, like with the storm being a fourth of the state, North Carolina, it takes me longer to drive to the outer banks of North Carolina from where I live than it does to get to Florida, like and the beaches of Florida, because North Carolina is a long state. And like the southwestern portion of the state is like this little tail that goes between Tennessee and Georgia. So it's like, if we were to evacuate going to Eastern North Carolina, like that's a huge ask of people. It's like asking people like down in the peninsula of Florida to like go to all the way to North Florida or beyond,
That's fucking wild. That the way that creek swelled that much is insane. Like that is the amount of rainfall that has to happen for that to happen is like, that's wow. Fuck.
And then imagine if that's a creek, imagine every creek that funnels into our rivers doing that. And then imagine what the rivers look like. And we're talking like the South Toe River, the Pigeon River, the Tuckasegee River, the French Broad River, like multiple rivers that the entire towns were built on. And so if a creek can go from like 6 feet wide to 150 yards wide, you can imagine a river, how much it could grow. And it's like, I saw it with my own eyes, the creek, and I still, like, it feels surreal. Like it feels like I was tripping, like I was not on drugs, but it feels like I was.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
You
you
see
hear
you see the pictures, like we've seen the videos and everything. Everyone's seen the videos and the pictures, but like when you put it into like that perspective, like a creek, like we've seen how big the rivers got, but like just a creek expanding that wide and like engulfing then everything in its path and basically turning into a massive river. That's fucking insane. So that's the first day. So then what happens like afterwards? After like, so what's happening the next day?
So again, I didn't know like how big as far as like width of the storm this was. I didn't realize like how far it had reached. So the first day, that's Friday, it like makes landfall. We schools are canceled, so we're staying home from work, and my internet, this is weird. We'll get into my conspiracy thoughts later. My internet was on for the first essentially like 24 hours after the storm had hit. I had power and everything. But then I started seeing like, because I was on social media, I started seeing posts like about Asheville, which is where my little sister lives, and about like other areas. And so my little sister tried to call me and I tried to answer it and I couldn't hear anything. Like it wasn't like static, it was just like dead silence as if there was just no connection whatsoever, but it said that I was on the phone. So where I live is already kind of a dead zone for cell phone signal. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else and like try to find cell phone signal because I didn't think anything was weird at first. So and at this point, so it's like Friday, like midday, and the water had already receded like a good little bit, like as soon as the rain had stopped, which was like 11 or 12-ish that day. So I go out and I'm like, all right, I'm going to see if they're like where I can get cell phone signal. And I drive across town to a grocery store called Ingles on the other side of Waynesville and didn't get cell phone signal from where I was all the way to the grocery store. And I tried to call my sister like 15 times on Friday, like literally just like roaming around Haywood County, like trying to get through to her. And that's when I realized like, this is not normal. So then I get back home and my internet goes out sometime on Saturday. And at that point, so there's no cell phone signal anywhere. I had just started to realize like how badly like the whole region had been devastated and that I needed to be concerned about people that I had not imagined needing to be concerned about. I didn't know why my little sister had called me. I didn't know like what the situation was with her. And so we get to Saturday, my internet had gone out. And at that point, I'm like just trying to figure out sort of any like information wherever I can. So for the most part, I'm trying to figure out where, if anywhere, has Wi-Fi and cell phone signal. Because the first thing that happened is like in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I have all of these people and like we could be immediately mobilizing to like respond to this together, but I can't reach anyone. We don't even know like if our friends and family are alive or safe at this point. So I figure out after roaming around for a while, I had walked about like not quite a mile, but almost a mile from my apartment around like, so Richland Creek has a greenway and everything like the greenway has a dog park, et cetera. And all of that had been destroyed by the river. So I was like taking this roundabout way to get like further down to the like baseball field. And I saw that there was like 4 people standing there like on their phones. And I was like, this must be the spot. This is where there's cell phone signal. So literally was just like standing out there on my phone, like checking messages. And my grandma was like trying to get a hold of us, and that's my dad's mom. And so she was like, have you heard from your dad? I have a 13-year-old little brother who has autism. And so she was really worried about them. And finally, a text came through from Shay because even still, like there wasn't enough signal for us to get through over the phone. Like we could only really get messages out. And Shay's my sister. And so she had said like, we're fine. Like we had evacuated, but she had messaged me and just said like, it's bad, Chelsea. And found out later that she had lost her apartment. The floodwater had like completely engulfed the first floor of their apartment building. It was along the Swannanoa River. And it's since been condemned. And like, I'm really glad that she made the decision to evacuate because like, you know, she's 23 and I was not very smart at 23 years old. So I'm like, I can imagine doing some dumb shit and like really getting her or not being alive. And a lot of people in Asheville did lose their lives. And so heard from her like at some point on Saturday, and then Sunday is when I started getting out and doing welfare checks on people, starting with my dad and my brother in Jackson County. Just to like, so Shay had tried to send like one of her friends down there on Saturday to check on them, and they weren't even allowed down the road because it had been blocked off by giant trees and debris and stuff where my dad lives. So
Real quick, I was just about to ask, how are people being able to get it? Like, are people able to drive? Like, are roads passable? Or like, I've heard stories people having like I had someone message me on Instagram, like, hey, can you put something out, like trying to find like anyone in the Asheville area this to find somebody, like we can't find anybody. I've had to walk miles to get cell phone service. It turned out their family member like took shelter in a Home Depot and they had to all sleep in a Home Depot. So like how are people getting around in your area? Because I've heard like just personal stories, people having to walk miles in
Yeah.
order to get service. So like are people being able to drive bikes? Like what are we doing here?
So the problem was in the first week, especially because there was no cell phone signal and the infrastructure was so damaged and there was no internet, nowhere could take cards, like debit cards for payment to get things like gas for a car. And then also we weren't getting deliveries of fuel. So like we were lucky when, like, at least in this, I don't know how Asheville looked, but for my town, we literally would like let each other know. We're like, oh, the pilot down by Crabtree has gas right now. Like, go fill up your car, because we didn't know where to get it. So folks were getting around. I was walking because I was like, well, I don't want to have to worry about gas when I need to actually get out of here. So it was a walkable distance for me to go like a mile from my house to get cell phone signal. So I would do that like a couple times a day. But we could drive, and the roads were not clear. Like even when I checked on my dad and brother on Sunday, like it looked like someone, like maybe probably like 3 or 4 good old boys, like had just like, there was a huge tree and it looked like they just pulled it enough so that like a single car could get through the road. I have friends who live in Asheville who chose to evacuate on like day 3 or 4 because they didn't have power and they were running out of supplies at that point. And they still were like, they tried to go one way and there was a tree down. So then they tried to go the other way and then there's a tree down, but someone was coming up with a chainsaw. So they like helped each other chainsaw to get out. So, I mean, it was a situation where like we could get around, but it wasn't easy. And it was a lot of us like helping each other clear roads so that we could figure out if our people were safe. And like, even when I went to go check on my dad and brother, I had gone to where I could get cell phone signal and had posted first, like, hey, does anyone in Sylvan know if Mockingbird Lane is accessible? Because I need to get to one of the off roads to get to my dad and brother. And so like it's been a really interesting experience of like really like word of mouth based, like information sharing to support each other in this moment of like, and even folks from the outside trying to get in with supplies, like asking like, okay, like which of the routes are clear? What's the best way for me to approach y'all right now without coming across like a highway in the river or whatever.
I do want to make a quick point real quick for our long time listeners. I was made fun of for having a handheld ham radio. And I saw on TikTok people asking ham radio operators to please call in certain frequencies because people living in very rural areas, that was the only way of communication was ham radio. So all of you, and I'm not talking about my two co-hosts now, but we had a horrible co-host that got on to me for that, and then people did make fun of me online for it. But now, I feel vindicated because ham radios
As you should.
it was very handy. And even though if you don't have a license, you can't operate them in emergency situations. Definitely
Absolutely.
check the rules about that. But I'm pretty sure that being stranded in a hurricane in a post-apocalyptic North Carolina counts as an emergency. So yeah, score one for all of us weird, bald, straight white men that have ham radios. You know what, guys? Finally,
put that on the board.
We finally fucking did
Right.
it. We have like every single horrible thing that's ever happened throughout history, and one pro is ham radios. We fucking did it, guys. Round of applause. Adam, throw in some clapping at this point in the episode for
Maybe
bald
even
white
a roll
men.
tide.
I tell
Maybe
you
a
what, the
roll-
way
roll
I
damn
was
tide.
like, whoever knows anything about ham radios, someone please help me. And hey, the comrades came through. I got like 7 ham radios delivered to me. Do I know how to use them? No, but they're
Listen,
there.
you got those 7 bow fangs. Let's fucking go.
We're going.
Yeah,
We're
I got
gonna
mine.
set
I
up
got
a
the
network
super
of
long-
repeaters
I'm
all
telling
the
you,
way
yeah.
from here
I'm
to
telling you,
fucking
hell
Florida.
yeah. I got the fucking extended fucking antenna and everything. I'm ready to go. The extended battery. Look, I'm just saying, when shit hits the fan, y'all gonna be wanting my ham radio, and I'll let you have it because I'm a good person.
That's it. We need to
Nobody
make
wants your
Nelson a
ham
We'll
shirt
trade for it.
specifically that says, I know you want my ham, and then radio and release bold text
That's a good one.
underneath that.
That's a good
Yes.
one.
I
Ask me
fucking
about my
love that.
ham.
That's actually maybe
Ask me about
Gee, ask me about my ham. Oh my god. Anyway, Jesus Christ.
I know you want my ham and you can have it. Oh,
Look, I haven't.
You just gotta ask.
Ask me about my ham extension.
Please,
The
please,
silence after Chelsea said that is fucking priceless. And in my head, I'm like, I haven't had a woman say that to me in probably for a really long
you're welcome. It's my gift to the people.
time. Like, you you're so starved for like attention. Someone says the most unhinged fucking shit. Oh my god, that was beautiful.
Someone just brushes your hand the wrong way.
Get
Is that what you're saying?
Shut up, Mark. Oh my god. Okay, actually, I just clipped that. Please, somebody clip Chelsea.
Hey, chat, clip that.
You can have my ham. That needs to be the intro of the episode.
That's gonna be the promo reel for that. Into that
creepy like minor key version of Rocky Top that's been going on that's on TikTok. Oh my god. Okay, anyway. Backtrack real quick. So Asheville, right? So I mean that was like one of the things that was talked about a lot on TikTok on social media was like even the news like at one point it was like every single road in and out of Asheville was impassable. Like Asheville had been completely cut off from the rest of the world. So like, did your sister tell you anything or like what the fuck was like going on and like how like when you talked about I-40 just crumbling, it's a major fucking interstate just gone. So I think that like if do you have anything about Asheville because like that seemed to be like the big that and the places that got completely destroyed, but seeing Asheville as a major city, just the fact that it was completely cut off from everything was insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Asheville, I think, is what most folks are familiar with. And Asheville is like usually pretty accessible. And I think it's good that you mentioned that I-40 is an interstate. I don't know if I didn't understand how highways worked until like a couple years ago. So for the people like me, interstate means it runs from one fucking end of the United States to the other end of the United States. It's a major highway. And you could not get from Tennessee to North. You still, I mean, I think they've opened like one lane of it now, but like you could not get from Tennessee to North Carolina on this major federal road. I-26 is the same way, like coming in from like Eastern, and it wasn't that it was completely cut off, but it was that like every road at some point was impacted. So like, for example, I had, my cousin coming in from Eastern North Carolina using I-26 because I-26 coming from the east direction into Asheville, you could get in, but not coming in from the western direction.
Yeah. And for those who want some boomer knowledge, right? East to west is even.
Yes.
North and south is odd. So there you go.
It's important
when the
information.
grid goes down fucking completely,
you're gonna want to know this shit.
And you don't have your ham, right? You're gonna know, hey, if you see an interstate sign, you're either going east to west or north to south based on if it's odd or even.
We'll be going through that again.
Even
we'll be going through that again when
west.
it gets to my bit about Milton because
Fuck
we're going to talk about roads.
Is it 95 that comes up from Florida to us?
Florida obviously is like if you look at Florida as like a polygon rather than like the natural shape of the state as a rectangle heading down, on the eastern side of the rectangle is 95. And this is how like I remember which way the north numbers go, because 95 is about as east as you can get, and 75, so the number goes down, is on the west side of the state. And those are the two big major roads that go from the very south of Florida all the way up into the areas that people were telling Milton evacuees to use, which is why the evacuation was like Florida, again, like Florida is used to this. This is not like Florida's better at this. This is not that like anything like that. This is not a moral argument. It's just that Florida has to deal with this constantly. And I have to say shit like that because there's so many people who are like, well, why didn't they evacuate? Like making it a moral argument. The evacuation is difficult out of Florida because it is an isthmus. We have water on 3 sides and 2 roads that go north to south. So if you want to evacuate, when Milton hit, it was Wednesday night into Thursday morning. If you had not started to leave Florida by Sunday or Monday, you weren't getting out of Florida before Milton. So like if you ever have like one of those people, especially when it came to people who were hit in North Carolina and Tennessee, like all of those areas where Helene hit, like people asking why didn't you evacuate, like that's a shitty question to ask. It's also a shitty question to ask anybody in Florida, because we know how difficult that evacuation is, and they couldn't even, like, there will usually come a point where they close down the southbound. So if everybody was evacuating north, they'll close down the southbound on 95 and 75 so that you can use all lanes, but they can't close that down while there's a lot of people still using it. There's still people that have to get north and south in the state, so they're not going to close down the other half of the highway. So you have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people trying to evacuate on just one side of the road, and those are the only two main roads to get out of the state at that point. Like, it's not as easy as like, why did you evacuate? Like, there's that much chance. There's such a little chance to do it.
That's one thing that really was weird to me. Well, there's a lot of things weird about Florida, but like how there's only like two major interstates. You would think that like there'd be so many interstates coming into Florida, but it's just like you said, 95 and 75.
And 75.
Yeah.
And the problem is that Florida is not actually that wide. Like you can go, so I live in the I-4 corridor.
True.
The I-4 corridor is the main road that goes east to west in Central Florida. It's like outside of Miami, it's really the big areas of habitation in Florida. And you can go east to west, and it's not a straight shot east to west. It's like northeast to southwest on I-4 in less than 3 hours. Like, the state is not wide. The state is very long. That's the problem.
That's perfectly
so
fine.
like if they wanted to build another so like if they wanted to build another north south, like it would be for most of the time surplus to need, because it, like, there's not a whole lot of space in the middle. No, somebody gotta make things weird, man.
Look, man, you're right. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Take the
You think
score
this
off
is
the
funny,
board.
Nelson?
That one you got for the ham.
No, not the hams. Don't take away our hams.
You get your
Bruce
Jib
penalty.
Noodle star removed.
Oh my god. Okay. So,
So
all right.
Chelsea, I'm very interested in what you have seen of the social response. I'm not talking about like the like political response. I'm talking about the social response to from other Americans towards people in your area that were impacted by this. Because like I was just saying, like people are making moral judgments, and I want to hear like firsthand how this is looking to people who have been impacted.
Okay. No, I think so. First of all, the moral judgment towards Appalachia and like the poor, predominantly like white rural communities is nothing new. Like, I think that, like, especially when it comes to, y'all understand like the Democratic Party being a tool for maintaining like white supremacist, capitalist, like supremacy. And so especially in 2016, part of my radicalization journey, like farther left than the establishment, because I kind of came in through the establishment wing, like part of what contributed to that radicalization was the way that I saw the Democrats scapegoating Appalachia for Trump's victory, while having worked with them and seeing firsthand how they had contributed to the sort of economic conditions that traumatized people into making like these horrible decisions that were not aligned with their values, but then also how they had completely abandoned our region during the election season to even, they didn't even try to win votes out here. They just handed it to Trump. And so I say that because in Kentucky in 2022, when they got wrecked by a hurricane, we heard similar rhetoric that was not just a moral judgment around why didn't they evacuate, why didn't they do these things, but a moral judgment around they deserve it. They should have voted better. They are climate change deniers. They get everything. They deserve all of this and more. And I think that, I mean, I can speak to also 2021 and Tropical Storm Fred hit. People in Crusoe that I was organizing with literally said, because we waited weeks for an emergency declaration for Crusoe when that hit. And they said, oh, they're not giving it to us because they think that we are all Trump voters. because we were under a Biden administration at that point. So I think that this moral judgment and this idea that like, oh, we didn't do the right thing because we're stupid, because we're backwoods, because we're hillbillies, because we're climate change deniers, yada, yada, whatever it is, I think is not new and was pretty expected, at least for me. I think what was different for me this time and what was really impressive and kind of shifted my neural pathways is I had so many more connections from Rednecks Rising across Appalachia from the north to the south of the region. And that social reaction to what had happened, and even y'all and folks who aren't necessarily rooted in Appalachia, but are in solidarity with the working class revolution and the movement that we're trying to create together, was that I didn't even have time really to pay attention to the outside news and what other people were saying about us, because I was leaning in so hard to this network that was showing the fuck up. And like, we've had people who really just without, so the first week of the flood, I think it was either Tuesday or Thursday or Wednesday, one of my friends who's a community health worker, we realized that we were only going to be able to use cash and we didn't know how much fuel we were going to have. And people without power were going to need fuel for generators. And so she just looks at me and she goes, Chelsea, we need cash for gas. And I literally just wrote on a piece of notebook paper, we need fuel or cash for fuel, and my Venmo on a piece of notebook paper and posted it on my story. And immediately, like, folks without question just started contributing. And we've been able to raise like over $5,000 of mutual aid funds from up and down Appalachia that I've been able to firsthand just drive into Madison County, Yancey County, and hand people like small bills of cash to be like, get this to your neighbors who need it the most, because I trust you to know your people. So I think it's a very interesting dichotomy and juxtaposition between kind of this, the sort of masses perspective around why didn't they evacuate, and the folks who are still rooted in this weird way of thinking that somehow each of us individually can create a better reality in a bubble by just doing some particular action or taking some kind of responsibility for ourselves, versus the reaction from those who are in this organizing network and this narrative reclamation network, for those of us who are like the storytellers in it and like who recognize the collective survival and our interconnected fates in this way. And so it's been a very trippy experience to be like, whoa, it feels like I'm in one foot is in one world and one foot is in a different world, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I remember one thing that like we when Katrina hit, right, New Orleans flooded, and you heard the same rhetoric like from both from Democrats too. Why didn't they evacuate? And like the whole thing is like it cost a lot of fucking money to evacuate. Let's not forget how expensive
You
it is.
have to have somewhere to go. Where are you going to go?
You had I remember that one. I do want to have our friend of the show, Chris, on here to talk about Katrina, because he's from New Orleans. And like, there's a story that one kid, like a teenager, he literally just got a school bus and loaded people on it and drove all the way to Houston, because like it's like it cost a lot of money to get the fuck out of somewhere. It's like, you think you're just gonna like snap your fingers and like, oh, I'm in a safe spot now. No, it's fuel. It's having a car. First off, it's having a reliable mode of transportation. Then it's gas, and then it's being able to get like everybody in there, get stuff you need to bring, and to get out. And then what Kyle was talking about, how Florida itself, there's two major interstates, and if they don't open up the other lane of traffic, or they don't disable the tolls on the toll road, the expressway, like that's it. It's the two interstates out, right? And you lucky if they do open it up and everyone can go. And I think I remember, Kai, did they finally make the expressway free? They disabled the tolls temporarily. Yeah.
75, once you get past, or while you're in Ocala, which is in the mid north of the state of Florida, if you're on 75, it turns into the turnpike, which is a toll road. So there's not like getting off of it. You're kind of like funneled onto there. Florida is a toll road state. Like they're big on their toll roads. So like if you're evacuating on 75, either you have to find the smaller highways, which they do exist. There are smaller roads that you can get out on.
Oh yeah,
But
we've
if you're
taken
having
them.
so many, if you're having such a volume of people move, everybody's going to be, if like, if you have such a volume of people moving, those smaller roads are going to get clogged easily. Like, and another thing that I want to bring up with evacuation in the state of Florida and anywhere else that you have to evacuate for these storms is that yes, it does take having a reliable mode of transportation. So if your car is kind of a banger and you don't trust it, it happened a lot with Tampa. It also happens on the East Coast, but right now what's happening with Tampa is that, and it happened in Orlando. So when I start to talk about Milton, I'll say like we did have a problem with getting fuel in the middle of the state because everybody here is used to preparing for that. So they go out and buy fuel, and the local like fuel stations deplete quickly. And so it does come into that kind of word of mouth. Oh, I heard the 7-Eleven down here still has gas, or I heard this one still has gas. The gas station that's a block away from my house was already out of fuel on Monday, and the storm wasn't going to hit until Wednesday night, basically. So, like, if you have that reliable mode of transportation and you think you're going to be on a highway for a very long time, and like you might be stuck in standstill traffic because they haven't opened up the other lanes of the highway or something like that, you run the risk of running out of fuel on the road. You run the risk of being a sitting duck and then hoping that somebody will be able to help you as you're evacuating. And one of the things, I wrote a long post, like, yes, I still use Facebook. A lot of my family's on there. But I wrote a long post just prior to Hurricane Milton hitting, saying that like when you're talking about somebody evacuating, there are so many factors that come into this, that you have people who have never experienced a hurricane before and don't understand how bad they can be, versus people who have experienced 35 hurricanes and know how to ride them out. Their reason for not leaving is almost the same. You know, there's those reasons. There's the reasons that people have elderly, disabled people who need help with doing movement themselves, who the infrastructure is not there for helping people that need those extra precautions. So, and where I am, both of my parents are disabled. My mom is a kidney patient, she's a dialysis patient. So she needs access to electricity and dialysis machines every other day to save her life. She needs electricity and she needs to know where she's going or she will die. My dad is also disabled. His mobility is disabled. So if I were to evacuate them, I have to know exactly where I'm going that has a dialysis port that my mom can go to, someplace where my dad and his mobility issues will be catered to. We also, like, there's so many people that have pets and livestock. And yeah, like, oh, it's just a cat. When it comes to human lives versus just a cat, just a dog, I can understand where the line ends up getting drawn. But for a lot of us who are here saying, I can't leave my cat and I don't know if I'm going to be able to go someplace that will accept my cat. Or you have a whole farm of livestock that you can't just leave to die. You have to be there to move them. There's so many reasons to not evacuate, and they're all valid. And so you have the logistical side, you have the social side, you have just a knowledge base. If you have the knowledge of what storms are like, that anytime somebody says, well, why didn't you evacuate? They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what it's like to live through these, especially to live through a truly catastrophic one. And we do end up having these truly catastrophic ones every 10 to 20 years at this point. They're probably going to start getting faster between them. We had Andrew in, it was 92 or 93. We had Katrina in 2005, was it? We had Maria, which took out a lot of Puerto Rico. We have Helene now taking out a lot of Appalachia. Like, it's going to start moving faster. The roll time between these is going to start moving faster because of anthropomorphic climate change. But like, we can't keep using this moral argument against people, especially like if you think about the people in Puerto Rico, where are they going to go? They're on an island. How do you evacuate from a storm when you're on an island?
And especially like,
All right, I'm just rambling now.
No,
that was beautiful.
It was beautiful. It was a whole sermon. You took us to church. And it's especially when you think about like, they're getting more frequent and they're getting bigger. So what happens when there's nowhere to fucking evacuate to? Like, what happens when the Western states are on fire at the same time that we're experiencing a hurricane? You know, like, at some point we have to stop pretending that like some small group of people just needs to make better decisions for themselves, and we have to actually start being like, wow, maybe there are consequences to our actions as a society, and I don't want to end up in the same boat, so okay, let's throw on the brakes a little bit, you know, like
Yeah. I don't mean to laugh. Mark's AirPods died, and he's just
heartbreak
like
emoji.
taking like the
Oh,
typical Gen Z like
Mark
downward.
dead.
Mark dead. Um, yeah, and then what was the okay? So what was the one that hit the Panama City beach? Right, that was that one. My cousin was down there, and he was just like, yeah, it was just like that whole section, like Mexico Beach, like Panama City areas, was just wiped out. Like it was gone, and they were finding people in trees. They were finding bodies in the woods. Like weeks after it, it was just like billions of dollars in destruction. And what Kai brought up, like, Florida is used to hurricanes. Like, if you live in Florida, a hurricane's gonna come eventually, at least one every season, right? But like Appalachia, you don't think about fucking hurricanes like hitting the mountains. And so people are like, well, what happens? Like, yeah, well, the wind isn't necessarily the problem. It's the flooding. And you take into account
It's
like strip mining and mountaintop mining, like already destroying like any sort of inlet or any sort of soil that can like absorb the rain. And the mountain, I don't know how, I'm not a geologist, I don't know how this shit works, but I know
the
it's definitely affected
geology
it.
of like the mountains and that whole kind of area is it's not made for that
Yeah.
kind of flooding. So I've been learning a little bit about how Florida has dealt with storms, and that we have a lot of what's called scrub pine here. So we have very dry, tall pine forests that are in a lot of a very sandy ground. So when we have storms come through, our trees do tend to fall over, but those sand pines, their roots hold on. You have large amounts of rain and flooding. And that is how a lot of Florida, if we had left our environment more natural, left those water sinks, if we left the swamps and the Everglades to collect water more naturally, and with our native plants to be able to move that water to the side and suck it down, we have natural aquifers underneath the state. Florida can survive with less damage than we have been doing recently, because we have changed a lot of how the natural geology and the flora of the state works. But Appalachia does not have its ground and its plants, they did not evolve for those same reasons. They did not end up planting themselves there for the same reasons. So you have dirt and tree runoff that is going to come with the floodwater. So you have a catastrophic amount of rain causing a lot of floods that's coming down mountains, that's going to pull a lot of that soil and the natural trees, the dead trees or the trees that are going to lose their root systems down with it. So not only do you have the floodwaters, you have this huge break front that's coming with it that's going to demolish buildings as it's moving through. And that's, as far as I can understand, part of what has made this so catastrophic for people further north in Florida, because their land was not made to deal with this. And that probably has a lot to do with, as I said, anthropomorphic climate change, that we have created the situation where a storm could get so big, suck up so much water, and have so much power, because storms run on is picking up all that hot water, picking up all that rain, going up into Appalachia and dumping it down onto a ground that can't deal with it.
Mark, don't leave. It'll mess up the audio stuff. So just stay with us. We love you. Or call in. Sorry. Just like right, but like definitely. Yeah, bro, you're gonna mess everything
Bro,
up
bro.
if you try to be a zoomer. Anyway, um, yeah, and then that leads into what Kai was talking about, like all the debris comes in, and then you have that's leads into like going back to Asheville, right? These trees, the logs, everything, the soot destroys bridges, it destroys dams, it destroys roads and infrastructure, right? So I do want to double back to Asheville real quick, because like Chelsea, like have you heard anything from like it when people hear a city being cut off, like we think about, I don't know, like sieges and other stuff like in war, but like this is a very popular, heavy populated U.S. city that was cut off. Every road in and out was gone. And I don't really think people realize how devastating that is. And so, like, if it, like, did your sister like say anything about Asheville? Like, could you just tell us? I know that's not where you are, but like, I feel like that's like something that definitely needs to be talked about. That like a major, like, a pretty decent sized U.S. city was just completely cut off from the rest of the world.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Asheville like is a point of reference too, right? Like it's when I tell people where I'm from, I'm like, oh, Asheville is the closest city. Like, so it's like a point, it's a regional hub, right? So like if it's the closest metro area, that's where the largest amount of deliveries, et cetera, are coming into and then being dispersed through the region. That's where I-26 and I-40 come to an intersection, if you will, and like trade off so people are able to take different routes through the country and into the region. Um, I think so here, was that
Or
Mark who
Mark is stuck in
asked?
the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark asked about didn't a dam break, and this
The
kind of
chat.
circles back to the like social response, but also I'm fast forwarding a little bit to like all of the misinformation, et cetera, that's been going out there. It was so fucking, I had entire panic attacks over the fact that I didn't know what was real. Like we were getting like because the comms were down, we couldn't actively check any news that we would normally check or talk to each other to be like, did this really happen over there? So we heard rumors about Lake Junaluska, which is where I live, breaking. It didn't break. We heard rumors about other dams breaking. I heard that Lake Lur's dam broke, but I actually don't know if that's like this is why I'm thinking about this now. I'm like, I don't actually know if that's true or not. Which was part of this whole experience, you know, felt low-key like a psyop in a lot of ways, at least like the response to the devastation and like all of the disinformation and the like rumor mills and stuff. It's just felt like the confusion was intentional.
So no, the Hurricane Helene did not break any dams, but they were a lot of them that were threatened. And a big thing that I think people need to realize is that a lot of these dams were built by the TVA like almost 100 years ago. And so
Yes,
while this was a test and they almost failed, so really if this happens again, like
they're done.
it's going to be bad. Like you would you say the lake? Which lake?
Lake Lure.
Yeah, like that's the first one that popped up. It was actually officials initially feared this dam in North Carolina would fail, but it was announced that it was stable. And so like it's like these locks, these and I ranted about this before on other episodes, but like the lock system in our country, especially up along the Mississippi River, all the dams the TVA built, they are 80 years old, almost 100. They're 90 years old. In 2030s they will be 100 years old, right? They are not designed for this. They have not a lot of them haven't been updated, right? Um, we don't do inspections of these. Like the funding for it's been cut since Reagan. Like if one of these dams were to if one of those dams were to have failed, right, the devastation would be worse than what it
Oh,
is.
yeah. I mean, entire towns were wiped off the map, but many more towns would have been wiped off the map if the dams had broken. Was and it's kind of to speak to like why Asheville was cut off and to go circle back to what you were saying, Kai, about like our geology and our plants and ecology is not meant for this kind of impact. And there's like a triple threat here. So, one, we're not designed for taking on this much rain all at once after already having been inundated with rain. Two is we have not invested as a country in resilient infrastructure for climate change. So, like you were just saying, we do not inspect things, we don't upgrade them to be able to withstand bigger and more impactful storms. And as part of the development that our country has actually invested in, what they call infrastructure has actually just done so much harm to whatever ecology is in place. So, where there would be additional plants to help soak up some of the rainfall, instead, we have concrete beams and buildings, and there's nowhere for that water to go, right? And so then you have this crumbling infrastructure. And then in Appalachia, what folks forget is that our mountains are fucking ancient. So, like, the land here is not like, it's not like the Grand Canyon where it's like baby land and there's lots of like places for things to like give new life to. Our land is full already of trees and plants, whatever does not have buildings on it. And so, and also to circle back to like settler colonialism, the mountains, the way that they run, so Florida is flat, right? We were one, built on the rivers, and two, all of the rivers and the creeks run down into the valleys, which is where our towns were built. So you've got all of the water coming down from the mountains. And so if you're in the valley, you're extra fucked because all of that water's coming in. And if there's a landslide, that's where it's headed. And that was a big thing too, is because our mountains are so ancient and because of the overdevelopment, you have landslides literally killing people and wiping out entire houses, which is something that most folks think hurricane and they don't think landslides, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I like the hand gestures that you're doing. Like people can't see it, but the end of the landslides. It's just so fucked. Okay. So the real conspiracy is why the fuck people don't believe that climate change is real, because going back to Milton, right? It set a record from category 1 to category 5, right? The fastest a hurricane has gotten that big, like that strength, that quickly, that big, right? And to the point where the National Weather Service was like, this storm is reaching the limits to what our atmosphere can hold. It is quickly becoming the largest storm in the history of like recorded history that we know of, right? And that's insane. The fact that it went from tropical storm to category 5 and hit Florida, what, kind of 4 or 3?
It
In
hit
that
the
time
coast
period?
of Tampa at a 3, but that's like
It was a big 3.
another thing that I wanted to talk about. Downgraded
Okay.
from a 4 by the time it hit.
Yeah.
But one of the things with Milton is that there's a big difference in Florida, and I'll say that just for us because I know that there's a lot of other places that get hit commonly, and I don't know what their preparations are like. But in Florida, there's a big difference between preparations that happen on the coast versus preparations that happen in the middle of the state. I live on the very tiny ridge that goes through the middle of the state. I am in one of technically the safest places in Florida when a storm hits. But what I was already seeing as the storm was approaching was the amount of not information sharing, but fear mongering. That they were talking about how big this storm was going to be, how catastrophic this storm would be. But at the time that many journalism outlets were talking about this was not the same information that was coming from the actual climate scientists, the actual meteorologists who were working on this. That the information was out there, it was available, but it's not what the journalists were running with. So yes, the storm was a massive storm. They said it got close to the scientific like limit of what a hurricane can get to, especially in this area of the world. But the meteorologists already knew that there was a cool front of dry air that was coming south, that was tilting a little bit, and that was going to knock some of the tilt off of Milton, and that would slow some of the spin. The things that you want with a hurricane is to slow the spin, to slow its speed when it's over land, definitely. If it's slow in the water, that means it can pick up more hot water and fuel it more. But if it slows on land, that's what you want because it'll start to break itself apart. And living in Florida and dealing with hurricanes, it forces you to learn a little bit of meteorology just for survival, basically. So when you hear things like cool front, dry air, knocking the spin off, you're thinking, as somebody who's lived through these things, it's like, this is good. It's going to start tearing itself apart. Now, when it did hit Tampa, it's catastrophic. I have an uncle and his girlfriend who live out had to evacuate from Milton. So even though Helene didn't hit into central Florida, being on the Tampa side, especially because he's near the river, the Hillsborough River in Tampa, you get the storm surge that comes that can cause a lot of flooding. So they had to evacuate twice. Now remember, these hurricanes have hit within 2 weeks of each other. So you have a lot of rain being dumped on the ground and into the rivers at the same time. It's not having enough time to get enough runoff. So he had to evacuate for both of them. And in Tampa right now, there's still no power. He's hello, Mark. Mark's video is back on, guys. Okay.
He just came back from hitting his bong off camera.
It's never professional, is it? Like there's always something.
Is
I'm sorry.
what did they call it earlier? A geek stick? Is that what we were
Yeah,
talking about?
no,
A
a
geek stick.
geek bar is
If
what
anyone
the
wants
kids
to,
are calling it.
if anyone wants to donate, Mark, what kind of cable
Oh,
do you
thank
need?
you.
What kind
What
of
kind
cable?
of what?
What cable do you need now?
No, I need like
No, it was his
an
earbuds,
electronic.
Nelson.
No, but for the other headset he got, remember? That's supposed to be
Oh,
Bluetooth.
Shut
That's-
up. Shut up.
Doesn't matter.
Well,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
we should all toss these first world amenities anyways, because
Yeah,
we're all going to be
and-
Right,
using
yeah.
ham radios
I was
from
gonna
now
say,
on.
the fucking podcast is gonna be on ham radio, guys. Fuck yeah, turn it into frequency 15829 or
You know what
7.
we need to get carrier pigeons.
We were actually talking about this.
Oh my god. No, we need to go my dad, okay, real quick. My conspiracy boomer dad set up an antenna and I had a shortwave radio in my room. And I'm like, why the fuck think about it. Why the fuck is it in my room? And
He wants to
second,
play
like,
you a number station. That's what.
but like we had it, we couldn't talk because we didn't have the license, but we could hear. And I remember like turning it on and be like, what the fucking random ass language is this? Like, why do we have a shortwave radio? This is ridiculous. Because my dad thought the UN was gonna invade and blah blah blah, all that other stuff. Like my dad really is a
The
mixture
entire
of,
United Nations.
yeah, my dad's a mixture of Dale Gribble and Bill from King of the Hill. So yeah, it was the UN
Yeah.
was gonna come in and then my mom divorced him. Anyway, yay. So what are we talking about? Oh yeah, Mark's
All right,
back.
shut up so I can finish my thought. So the problem with shut up, Nelson. Let me finish my thought that the misinformation when it came to pre-storm is it's very hard to deal with. So we had already had the information that the storm was going to weaken before it hit land. Getting hit with a 3 in Tampa is still bad. That sucks. That knocks out power. They don't have gas in a lot of places in Tampa right now. They still don't have power. Like this is bad. A 3 is already bad. We don't need to fear monger a 5 actually hitting when the science was already saying the 5 is not going to hit land. And because we have already seen the devastation that could happen with Helene, so much of the country was so aware of what can happen that I had more people than ever reaching out to me to ask, are you guys okay? Are you going to evacuate? What are you going to do? How's your parents? Like all this stuff. And I had to explain to pretty much everyone that like, by the time it gets to where I live, it's going to be a 2 or a 1. I can deal with a 2 or a 1. And where I live tends to be quite safe from hurricanes just based on the geology and the area that I'm in. It doesn't hurricane because they can cause such concentrated damage, and explain it to all these people. But another thing that I said in my big long post about like hurricane preparation is that having to deal with other people's panic does not work for people who are dealing with it. People who are about to do panic messages, they don't need to reassure you while they're dealing with this. So as much as I love the people who reached out to me and were just worried about me and my parents and how we were going to deal with this, it took so much energy of my own energy telling them that like, hey, this is what we're looking at. I'm actively watching what the NOAA says several times a day. I am prepared for what's going to happen here. We're going to be fine. But I can only imagine that people who are in Asheville, in Western North Carolina, people who have been hit in those areas, as they're getting cell phone service back, you guys are probably getting hit with so many panic messages and then having to like deal with other people's panic. Like it seems like such like a leftist buzzword to say like you're dealing with like the emotional labor of dealing with that. But when you have so much of it on your plate, like it is damn difficult to deal with
like,
everybody's emotion on your plate.
And it's like, how do you reassure people? Like,
please go ahead.
It's like people reaching out, they're like, oh my God, like, how are you and your family? Like, is everyone okay? And I'm like, I mean, yes, like I have a home that's still standing, but like, no, my community is fucking wrecked. Like, what do you like?
Yeah.
How do you even respond to people like that?
How do you respond to that?
No, we're not good.
Yeah.
I'm actually dead. I'm texting you from beyond the grave.
Exactly.
I could imagine getting those panic text messages and asking, like, how's your family? And you haven't heard from your family.
No,
And now you have to come up with a response to say, like, I don't know. They could be dead. How do you want me to text that to you?
yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't know. If you hear from them, please let me know. I hope they have signal at some point.
Please tune in
Yeah.
to frequency 1582579.
Rednecks Rising and What's Left of the South on the
Oh,
air.
on
ham radio.
shortwave and ham radio. every AM 1170, right after the dude who talks about getting abducted by aliens.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
my segment.
Speaking of, my dad loved that radio. Anyway, long another time. But okay. So piggybacking off what Kai said about misinformation and conspiracies. So the dams didn't break. The hurricane was a category 3, and there wasn't 15 feet of storm surge that was going to wipe Tampa off the map.
Not made by a machine
It wasn't made by a machine.
There was no woodpecker.
or a big bird.
Big bird. But so Chelsea, like what is the actual truth about stuff? So we've all heard about militia, and we've heard about FEMA, and we've heard like you can get this amount of money, you can't get this. Certain places have been wiped off the map.
$750.
Yeah, certain places have been wiped off the map, certain places haven't. Like, what the fuck is the actual truth? And nothing but the truth. So help us, Mark.
Your guess is as good as mine. No,
Hell
I mean,
yeah.
I can only tell you what I know.
FEMA
And again,
camps.
there's FEMA camps. They've got our kids locked up in cages over here.
Obama's taking over North Carolina with the UN, brother.
Obama and Bush came together and they have taken over.
They're bulldozing the Elks Club.
That's the gay agenda.
That implies that Obama and Bush are together.
I mean,
that was the
like
conspiracy the whole time, brother.
Didn't you know?
Harry Styles is going to be so sad.
Oh my God, Mark.
I think,
God.
so here's what I know to be true from my own experience. Again, all of the disinformation feels very psyop-y. It's taking a lot of energy. So kind of like you were saying about like other people's panic, it's taking a lot of energy to also field misinformation from people who are like, oh, have you heard of this happening on the ground? Like, what do you know about this, et cetera? Because I'm constantly getting DMs about like, oh, is it actually like FEMA? Are they even there? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't even fucking care because I am just trying to take care of my people right now. Like, here's what I need from you if you want to be helpful and you care about us at this point in time. I will say, I mean, the government is here. I think we all know that the government is not meant to be adequately prepared to take care of all of us in a situation like this. I mean, FEMA itself is not a emergency relief and response agency. It is an emergency management agency, right? So there's a very different expectation of what is their purpose. And I think a lot of the disinformation like depends on us not fully understanding what we can expect from the government. And also, I think if we zoom out to the culture in general, if we become so individualized and siloed in our sense of survival of like, oh, to each their own, dog eat dog world, I've got my ham radio and my gasoline, like fuck you and yours, then we expect that like we become so distanced from our neighbors that it's like the government's our only hope, right? In a situation like that, because it's like, who's going to save you if it's not yourself or the government? And if you're fucked, you better hope they're going to show up. And I think that one thing about Appalachia that I love is just that, and I think I might have even talked about this at some point, either with you on the show, Nelson, or like in general, but Appalachia, mutual aid is a part of our culture. And community organizing is a part of our culture. I mean, we unionized so fucking well at the beginning of the 20th century that they were like, oh, better bomb these guys because they're about to fuck us up. So, you know, I think there's this communal response that really is not seen in a lot of other places. And I think that I don't know where the disinformation is coming from, right? Like, I don't know if it's planted by the government. I don't know if it's the media just trying to get more views and money. I don't know if it's coming from plants on the ground or whatever. But I think in general, it probably spooks people in power when they see that a lot of working class and poor people actually are more prepared to respond and keep each other alive in a situation than they've ever been prepared for, right? And I think that so all that said, the government is here. Mostly what they are doing is search and recovery. And they are doing like hazard mitigation. So, for example, when I was driving up to Marshall to go visit friends out there, the town of Marshall is in Madison County, and it's a one way in, one way out downtown situation in a gorge, so a canyon essentially. And the National Guard was posted up because you can't drive in because there's so much heavy machinery and so much like toxic mud and dust that you have to walk in because they don't want like traffic just kicking up all that shit through there. So the government's here. I've seen them with my own eyes and interacted with them. However, on the other side of that, like FEMA, so twice at the Pigeon Center, which is where I've been, it's kind of my local hub. It's very close to my house, and it's where I immediately went to right after, because they do community stuff year round, and they were already kind of prepared for this kind of thing because of how they engage in community. We've had two last week, and then yesterday, Monday, twice now, a FEMA rep has committed to being at our distribution hub at the Pigeon Center and just straight up not shown up. Right. So you've got this other side of the situation. It's like the government's definitely here. I can't say they're not here. How helpful they are as far as providing relief and response in this situation is a different question. Are they managing a lot of shit probably related to especially recovering bodies and probably more than anything infrastructure, like the city of Asheville. Here's what folks don't understand too. So going back to Asheville and Asheville being cut off, imagine like the city of whatever your closest city is. Imagine the water lines of that city getting literally the river, the French Broad River, changed the topography of the region. The river carved a new path for itself. So where there used to be water lines where people would get water from the water treatment facilities, and these water lines would like follow the curve of the mountain and they would be accessible. Now the water line is busted out of hell, underwater, under dirt. And so they're literally having to dig out these old busted out pipes and reroute and rebuild entire public infrastructures. So the government, yeah, is probably pretty busy with that. However, when we say like, does the government control the weather? They don't fucking control it with these radio machines, but they do control it with their poor ass decisions over many, many years that lead to this kind of situation, right? And like maybe if they were investing in climate resilient infrastructure, then they wouldn't have to be rebuilding entire fucking towns right now because there would be some kind of mitigation for this thing. So I guess, does that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. It's just like they're there, but they're like,
the government's not a people's organization, right? Like the government is not here to serve the people. The government is here to like keep tabs on what's happening. And
I can't buy a senator.
Yeah.
But I made a TikTok about this. So the $750 thing. So a lot of there's dangerous difference because we shoot on Democrats, but for the sake of shitting equally, like Trump is a piece of shit and Republicans fucking suck too.
They all are horrible.
They all are fucking horrible. And that blowhard orange buffoon and his couch fucker running mate have spread disinformation that is putting people's lives at danger. From legitimate news sources, like actual national like news has been like, hey, FEMA has stopped going door to door because they are being threatened with death from armed militia and other people deep in rural areas, right? Because of the misinformation that apparently it's spread through Trump's channels, right? That as we talked about before, like Chimney Rock, the town is gone, right? But apparently it was spread that like FEMA was going to confiscate the property and then sell it off and blah, 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 all this stuff. And so FEMA has had to stop going door to door and sets up and will set up, stations along the way that people then have to go to because they can't go to door to door anymore under threat of being killed. And the National Guard has run into bands of like militia that are like, we're hunting FEMA, like with AR-15s and like whatever else they fucking have, like good old boys in the back of pickup trucks saying like, hey,
Can I tell you
brother,
a story about this?
yeah,
Can I
let's
tell you a
go,
story about
brother.
this? Okay, so if there are any militias and there are any agitators, they are not from inside Appalachia. They are coming from outside. And I will tell you a story about okay, we don't want to. They're all right. When I finally got to see my friend Crystal, who lives in Burnsville, which Burnsville is one of the places that was decimated. Burnsville's pretty close to Mount Mitchell, Chimney Rock, Spruce Pine. So, I mean, Crystal had like, so in Burnsville, there's hundreds of people still living in a shelter because they actually don't have a home to go back to. People who do have homes still do not have power, and they are estimated to not have water for 4 years. 4 years. So we're dealing with like a huge fucking crisis. And Crystal's telling, so I finally get to see her and I'm talking to her. And this is the first time that I have confirmation of a militia group on the ground, which is, so she's telling me about how it was like day 3 or 4 after the storm. And she was going up to the Roses parking lot, which is where they had a distribution center set up. And she's like dazed in her car, kind of like zoning out while she's waiting. And suddenly she hears a bang, bang, bang on her window of the driver's side. And she looks over and there's some punk ass in camo with an AR-15 strapped to his chest. So Crystal, I lost a little bit of my Appalachian accent over the years thanks to higher education, but Crystal has a thick Appalachian accent and is just an incredibly badass human. So she rolls down her window and this guy goes, "Who are you? Where are you going?" And she goes, "Who am I? Who the fuck are you? This is my goddamn town and I ain't never seen you a day in my life. You think you're so badass with that AR-15 strapped to your chest. Let me just reach back around here and show you what I got in the back of my car." So she's just going after this kid. And she's like, "Who are you with?" And he says, and she's like, "Oh, a bunch of fucking weekend warriors. I see your boots ain't even dirty yet. So you obviously haven't been out here helping at all." Well, so Crystal's not someone who actively works with like the police in most situations. And even in small towns, like we have our beefs with the local sheriff, etc. But lo and behold, the sheriff of Yancey County kicked out because they were not actually being helpful to the relief efforts. And he's like, "Boys, you got to get out of here, pack up your shit and go." So if there are militia groups, which I am sure there's always a nugget of truth in every story, right? They are not Appalachians who are saying, "Get the fuck out of here. We don't want you here." It's people who are coming in from the outside and fucking up our relief efforts when we're trying to literally save hundreds of people who are living in a shelter.
Yeah. I think that one helicopter that blew away all with the
Was
downdraft
it?
that blew away the supplies
Oh.
apparently was like it was a helicopter. Yeah, that's what I think they said on Twitter. Like even the like, "Oh, we'll find." You see our logo on the side of the helicopter. So I do know that I don't know who the fuck or are the ones that are the ones I've heard of. Now God only knows what the hell is out deep in those woods. But like I do like. Well, I want to get into it when we ever do an episode of Katrina. But while I get like is like decentralized, like they definitely was a lot of problems from what I understand with their response to Katrina and like white supremacists in their organizations like firing at black people in New Orleans like post Katrina, like during the the chaos that ensued, right? The looters that were gonna go take stuff. No, it's the fucking we saw pictures in North Carolina of the police literally just standing in front of stores and people were like,
Guarding
"Hey,
the
I need
grocery
fucking
stores. Yeah.
I need food. Like what the fuck's the problem here?" Um but yeah, I that and oh yeah, the $750, right? So the 700 like the Trump and Couchfucker were like, "Oh, they're only getting $750. Well, like $750, look into it. It's the amount that you'll get right off the bat if you call up and be like, hey, this shit wrecked my shit. And they'll be like, all right, here's 750. Put in the application, you'll get more, et cetera, et cetera. So no, it's not just $750. That's the first amount you'll get. And then you can apply and you get more, et cetera, et cetera. Granted, yes, the bureaucracy probably sucks and it does take a while. But I mentioned in that, I was like, the real reason that like there is an anger bubbling below the surface when people hear $750 and they hear, oh, like FEMA's respond with $20 million, and then you hear that, and I'm not, it's whatever you fucking think about the goddamn war in Eastern Europe. I'm not here to talk about who's right, who's wrong. For the love of God, I'm tired of having this conversation. When you see that like Ukraine gets billions, right, of U.S. funding to keep fighting this war, right? And then on one that we can all agree with, Israel getting billions to literally now commit genocide, right? And FEMA's initial spout of like 20 million is nothing compared to the billions that we're giving to conflicts and little genocide overseas, right? And I think that's where a lot of the anger bubbles from, is we see that little billions going to other countries, which I get, like this, I understand that foreign aid has its place, right? But when it's going to fuel war and genocide, when there's people here that have just lost everything and we're not dedicating, the full force of the federal government to help people, right, in Appalachia or Florida or New Orleans, except we all remember the scenes, Katrina, right, in the height of the fucking Iraq war, they ran out of helicopters because all the helicopters were over in Iraq fucking killing people, right? They didn't have helicopters. The National Guard didn't have helicopters to evacuate people off the rooftops in New Orleans because we're fighting a war that shouldn't have been fought in the fucking first place. So I think that's where a lot of the anger bubbles up, is because we're giving all that money overseas when there's people literally suffering here.
And yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think I'm in this place in my like personal evolution where it's like I see all of it is just so fucking interconnected that that's where part of the rage comes from too. Because for one, I mean, FEMA announced that there was like an $8.7 billion shortage for their budget or something, and then turned around literally the same day, we're giving $9 billion to Israel for their genocide. If we back it up in reverse, going back to the infrastructure conversation, and even like, what are we investing in our communities here in Western North Carolina? The biggest employer in Canton, North Carolina, our local Evergreen paper mill, shut down, laid off all of their workers. So tons of people were out of work. And then simultaneously, the Democratic Party in charge of Buncombe County commissioners decides to give money, taxpayer money, not just like federal taxpayer dollars or state taxpayer dollars, but local taxpayer dollars to Raytheon to fucking construct a plant for us to build their warplanes here in Appalachia because we are poor and we need fucking money and they're shutting down our plants. So we've got to have somewhere to work. So then what do? They degrade the Blue Ridge Parkway even more, which means that the next time the storm hits, there's going to be even less resiliency against it. They're going to be getting these poor white folks to build the warplanes that we're then going to use to murder brown people overseas. And then simultaneously, like, because we're sending that shit overseas to go kill brown people, we can't even invest in the communities and save our fucking people right here on the ground. Like, it's just so, it feels like I'm in this fucking death spiral.
All you had to say was Raytheon.
Greatest country in the world.
Greatest country in the
Hell
world.
yeah, brother.
They're constantly gaslighting us.
Let's also not forget that like the only place in the world where the one mineral is found for semiconductors has just been fucking wiped off the goddamn map.
And then it's like, no wonder we have these conspiracy theories, because if you zoom out enough, actually they are conspiring against us, but they're just killing us like a little bit more slowly than we are thinking that they are in these conspiracy theories.
Until the United Nations comes and invades us, brother. Tell you what, the
Right.
blue helmets are coming. Obama, the FEMA camps.
Oh, mama.
They're real, Obama. He's
He's
still in
still
power.
pulling the strings.
He's still a Joe Biden's a puppet. Tell you what, I know it. The Bilderberg Group.
Obama's
Jet
hand
fuel
is
can't
up
melt
Joe Biden's
spilled
ass.
Trump.
President Trump.
Hey, Trump.
It's that the whole reason that people think that Biden is not like he's not campus mentis is because it's actually like Obama in a Joe Biden suit and the electrics were failing. That's all. That's the only thing that was happening.
Oh my
I've
god.
seen the zipper. That's why I don't turn around.
I love the memes where it's like the end of a Michael Bay film. It's like, what I've done. It's Biden turning around and it cuts to like directed by Michael Bay.
I haven't seen
I'm
those.
gonna miss Joe, man. He's so fucking old.
the, the misinformation that I saw, the weirdest misinformation that I saw prior to Milton was from very left-leaning groups. And I'm not going to say who, but it was left-leaning groups who
You can say it and we'll bleep it out.
were sharing maps of supposedly, it's not for our safety. It's because I don't want to put them under blast because white people like to do that shit. So it was left-leaning groups that were not white-headed, right? Who were sharing supposed maps of nuclear power facilities all through the middle of Florida, saying this is the path of Milton. Think of all the radioactive fallout, like Fukushima, like all that stuff. And
Oh my gosh.
it took the power of other leftist groups, other non-white leftist groups, to fact check it and release a map of what kind of mountain. And it decreased from like 25 spots on the map to like 3, and one of them hasn't run since 2013.
But we should make one that's like, these are all the Waffle Houses that were in the past. Think of what they're doing to us. Like, just make up a.
Well, if we want to talk
correlation.
about that, like, if we want to talk about that, can we talk about the people that still were expected to go to work through these events?
Yeah.
I know,
Like those
right?
poor people. I don't know. I can't remember the name of the factory, but wasn't there a factory
Yeah,
somewhere that
holy
Yeah,
expected people to
plastic
come in
factory.
and they were
Yeah.
drowning in the building?
Yeah.
East Tennessee. It was a plastics factory. Yeah.
Like, it's just every time I've seen those interviews with the people who survived, who are crying on camera because of the trauma from that, like, I can't. How can you synthesize this within your brains and think that, oh yeah, things are running fine? This is how it's supposed to be. Like, I can't fathom it.
It really,
I can't fathom like a boss deciding that a plastics factory running the day that a catastrophic flood is coming. Anyway, please go ahead, Chelsea.
no. I mean, and it really is like if folks, so part of what I harp on a lot is how the trauma of everything that we are experiencing is a tool. And like the ruling class knows that we as human beings have a trauma response. And I mean, I think that's part of why white folks who are poor like buy into the white supremacist rhetoric, because the trauma response of like being poor and disposed of is then like, oh well, at least there's this one group of like brown people and black people that I can like point out to dispose of instead of me, right? And it's like this self-preservation. But I think that if folks are in this like freeze response of the trauma, like in response to the trauma that we're experiencing as a country right now, I think that's largely what is keeping them from seeing what is happening. Because to me, it feels so viscerally obvious that this is the class war. I mean, they are actively killing us and sacrificing us for the ruling class to continue being able to profit and extract and commodify the people and the planet, right? Like we think about the poor folks who were locked in the factory. Largely it was immigrants and undocumented immigrants who ended up getting stuck in there. Then we think about, I keep saying this too, like the next layer of Hurricane Helene's impact on Western North Carolina and East Tennessee is going to be an economic crisis. My sister lost her job because the place where she worked doesn't know when they're going to have running water and be able to serve food again. And she works in food and beverage. Hot Springs Spa and Resort, which was a huge employer in Hot Springs, North Carolina, had to shut down because it got destroyed and they had to lay off all of their people, which was a lot of older people for whom that was their career because there's not a lot of options. HCA, the Health Corporation of America, that basically runs all of our healthcare in Western North Carolina, is shutting down 3 facilities in Asheville because there's no running water. So where are those people going to work? So then we think about people who maybe they did or didn't lose their house, regardless, are going to be out of a job, going to be out of income. Simultaneously, we're building cop cities everywhere while we're passing new laws to criminalize poverty and criminalize homelessness. And like, to me, again, it's like, this is so, it feels to me like so obvious that it's like, they're planting the seeds. Like the path is right there that they are laying out for them to be able to dictatorship us. Send us to the gulag because we're not working hard enough, lock us in the fucking factories, just like, they literally have before. And we are seeing them start to do it again. And the fact that folks can even have the audacity to point to like, why don't you just evacuate? Because the bosses are fucking locking us in the factories. That's why. Like, sorry. The class shit, like it's always the people who have nothing fucking to lose, who lose everything down to their lives. I mean, we're talking the people who lost their homes. Yeah, it was some actual homes, but for the most part, it's like trailer parks that were built along the rivers that like got washed away. And so it's already poor folks who no one gives a shit about on a good day, who now are trying to fight for their survival and are facing like this misinformation and are being told like, well, you should have just evacuated, or maybe you should have just voted for Democrats and then your life would be great.
Hell yeah. I can't wait till we all end up in the same FEMA camp together.
Yeah.
No.
And that's like, I saw people saying like, why didn't you just say like, fuck your boss and leave? It's like, okay, so what if it wasn't that bad and then you like lost your job? Like there was no like win for those people either way. Like it's not that
Yeah.
easy to just be like, well, I'm going home anyway.
And
Yeah.
then a
Or
lot
if
of
you're an
times that's the
undocumented,
only, yeah.
go
No,
ahead.
no, exactly. No, but like also like people don't understand is a lot of these towns, like if like I know in Alabama, there's a lot of places where like, and it's probably the same in all of our states where like that one company will be the main employer, right? So if you quit that job, you don't have anywhere else to go to work, right? That's going to sustain you in any sort of way, you and your family. And so if you do quit, I mean, we're all in right to work states, right? So like if you quit because you like boss says you have to stay, or fuck you, I quit. Well, then if it isn't bad, or even if it is bad, like you won't have a job when you get back. So then you're fucked. So,
It's
Yeah.
a death
And then you lose your
sentence.
house anyway.
yeah. And then what Chelsea was saying undocumented, like there's a huge, like in South Georgia right now, like that's the article I read recently. It was like, the hurricane the weathers are hitting these parts, and like the undocumented workers are like, we can't get aid because we're undocumented. We can't leave. We're stuck here. If these places we work get wiped out, like what do we do? Right. So, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like it's a massive clusterfuck. So, and it's just gonna get worse.
Exactly. And if I feel like, I mean, to the $750, like here's another piece of a nugget of truth and whatever misinformation is out there. I still have not. So my partner was out of work for a part of the period after the hurricane. So we weren't making our normal income. Our apartment is intact, but we still have to pay full rent for the month, like all of our utility bills. And my sister, I already mentioned, her apartment was condemned and she lost her job. And we try to fill out the application for the $750 when our comms come back on, which was 2 weeks after the fucking storm. And for both of us, I went to her house to try her new apartment to try and help her. And we get all the way through to the end of this like application and we hit submit and both of us get the same error message, which is there's an error with your identity. Please check your social security number, your address, yada, yada, yada. And so then if you're already fucking frustrated and you're already having to like recalibrate your entire life, It's like, God damn it, you can't even make it easy to get the $750 so that I can pay my rent. And to me, it just makes it feel like none of it's real. Like none of this like economy is like, why do I need the $750 when we can feed, like I'm watching us feed each other and I'm watching us keep each other safe and I am watching us like exchange in new currencies with like I traded some chainsaws for some Narcan, you know, like and this is like because that's mutual aid and action on the ground, right? Like our hub needed like Narcan and Plan B and some other things, and that's just how it works in Appalachia. I got a chainsaw and you got some Narcan. So but I like watching this roll out in real time and show how fake capitalism is and like how actually we don't need that $750 to stay alive. What we need is fucking each other. Not, we don't need to be fucking each other, but we need each
That's what
other.
the plan B is for.
Really fucking. That's why we need the Narcan and Plan B. Because we need to be fucking each other to stay alive.
So you got a lot of fucking Plan B and some Narcan for a damn chainsaw. I'm talking about one of them Husqvarna chainsaws. I want a crate of Narcan and Plan B. Let's go.
Yes. No, but like in Madison
radio.
County, like in Madison County, where they're actively still like using a lot of those bigger tools, whereas Haywood County, we're not as much. In Haywood County, it's more, like I said, like the trailer parks, like we don't have as much of the big debris and like landslide kind of stuff. So trying to like, it's a very like communal experience where it's like, we have these sort of like, it's almost a spider web of regional hubs that then we know our neighbors even across county lines. And it's like, oh, here's what we have in Haywood County that we can help you with. And they'll have hot food and feed us. And so it's been this very, again, shifting neural pathways around what is possible and how we can escape the matrix of this bullshit economy that we've been given.
But on a much lower scale, but on the same kind of like frustration with the bureaucracy of it, I experienced a little bit of that just pre-Milton. So when we were starting to get an idea of how bad it was going to be through Central Florida, they started talking about these are areas that you can go get sandbags. Like the county is allowing, like is giving you like sandbags. And when I was here, I think it was Irma in 2017, you were told like your county designated area, you would go line up in your car, you would fill out a form while you're kind of inching forward in there. And then when you get to the end, you give them your form, you show them your ID, which is not ideal, but you show them your ID, and then they pop your trunk and they throw 10 sand bags into your trunk for you. Now, like sand piles, and they would give you 10 bags. So we just kind of had, and they told you had to bring your own shovels. So you'd have to go find an area that had sand pile and bring your shovel and fill your own 10 sandbags. And yeah. And when I was reading about this, I'm thinking like, if I wasn't here and my parents are both disabled, how would they get their sandbags? And so I was looking at that, and they have like a phone number that you could call. So I called the phone number, and they want you to apply for help with the sandbags. Now, at this point, it's 2 days before the hurricane hits. What faith do I have that they're going to get through that application, and either I would have to go pick up sandbags or the county would come by with sandbags to put them down for my parents' house, right? So, and when I got to those sandbags, to this bag filling station, I showed a video to you guys, I think, that it was just like they would have dump trucks come in and dump a pile of sand in a parking lot. And there was a lady, there was like 2 or 3 deep. So it's like the person who's working on the sand, and then there'd be another person, and then there was me waiting to get to the sand, 2 people waiting in line to get to the sand. And the lady who was in front of me was there alone with a child who was 5 or under. And like you're told that you have to bring your own shovel or something. And a lot of people don't have shovels. For whatever reason, they don't have shovels. So I saw people using cereal bowls, cut off Coke bottles, plastic shoe boxes to try to fill their sandbags to like it was, thankfully, when I got up there, it was so crowded that when you would dig in with your shovel, you'd be hitting other people's shovels. So there was a guy who was there, and leave it to me to never give credit to men, but here we go. There was a guy who was there who's when you were at this place, you had to park far away, walk to the sand, fill your bags, leave the bags in that area, go pick up your car and drive up and then load the sandbags into the back of your car, right? So his wife, he said that his wife had to go get the car. So he was people who looked like they were in difficulty. So definitely the lady who was in front of me with her child, he helped me. I filled like 2.5 bags by myself, and I kept like hitting other people with my shovel. So he ended up helping me fill these sandbags. But by the time I was done, I had set my sandbags to the side and I pulled my car around, and there was one parking space open that was at the very end of the fill up station. And this was at a rec center. So it was like the length of like a rec center parking lot. And I thought, well, I did weightlifting. I can carry a couple sandbags at a time over to my car. I hauled close to 300 pounds worth of sand. I was like shaking and sweating. I got hit by a shovel on my knuckle. I still have a wound on my knuckle from that. But I can't imagine sending anybody who is not hale and hearty like the people who were there, and you expect them to fill out paperwork to be able to get sandbags to protect their home. Like I did weightlifting. I am in my early middle age. I'm quite strong. I have stamina and I can do this kind of thing. But if my parents had to do it, they'd be screwed, and they had no protection at the back of their house. Like, I don't understand when people are in this kind of emergency situation, making them go through paperwork.
Again, Federal Emergency Management Agency.
And I also want to clarify, Kai is strong as shit. Like, Kai told us what she lifted in high school, just, fuck it for fun. And I'm like, God damn, Kai. Fuck.
That's what the bull with the horns.
But that makes me lucky compared to like,
you mess with the buffalo, you get the horns.
Right.
But you have to consider that makes me lucky compared to like, I'm thinking about that lady who was standing in front of me, who was just an average middle-aged lady with a small child. Like, how is she going to haul 300 pounds worth of sand with her child and fill it by herself, et cetera, et cetera? Like, why is this the way that we have decided to distribute help?
Sounds like I need to delete my dating apps and get a shovel and start helping people fill sandbags, is what you're saying. Oh, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, no,
don't take advantage of weak women. No.
Shut up, Mark.
It's a bad look.
Okay.
Or weak men.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah.
Whatever you're into.
Yeah, for the record, I only said women because Nelson insists that he's straight. So.
I'm gonna hit you.
You're one septum piercing away from like being in a bear parade.
And that's a wrap. Good night, everybody.
You're done.
Anyway, before I was assaulted by Mark, what Kai?
Don't clip that.
Fuck off. Anyway, Kai brought up a good point. And this also is in North Carolina, and I know we've been yapping now for about like 2 hours, right? But I did see in Florida that DeSantis had mobilized everyone's favorite labor force, the prison labor force, to fill sandbags, right? And then, horribly enough, I had a mutual on Instagram was like, "Hey, is there any information about the jails in East Tennessee, North Carolina, Western North Carolina?" And come to find out, the same thing happened. They did with Katrina in New Orleans. They left the fucking prisoners. They locked the cells. And it's not even. I want to be clear, right? I don't give a shit if they're in there for god awful reasons, right? No one deserves to fucking drown and be left in shit and piss and God knows what else in a prison, right? But then, like, let's not forget that, if you go to jail, it doesn't mean you're guilty. First off, in Katrina, you had people that were arrested for being drunk in public, right? who died in jails because they were there in New Orleans. They got too drunk. They got thrown in the drunk tank, and the fucking guards locked that shit and left. And there are 500 something some odd inmates that are unaccounted for in uh from 2005 after Katrina, right? 500. They're just dead. They probably died. Like they're gone. And the same fucking thing happened in North Carolina. They locked the fucking cells and they said tough shit. And if it's the same thing that happened in New Orleans, the water backed up. They're up to their waists and their chests in waste, in water, dead bodies. There are horror stories out of Katrina where diabetic inmates went into shock and died, and were just their bodies are floating in the cells with everyone else. And the people, fuck the prison industrial complex. I don't care like what you did, right? Nobody deserves that to happen. Like they deserve to be evacuated like everybody else. And to just imagine like being in that situation, you've been abandoned, you're in a prison, your cell is locked, and the floodwaters are rising, and you don't know. It was like 5 days with Katrina they were left there, I think, before they finally came to get them. And they were just like, yeah, there's dead bodies floating in the fucking jails. So that same thing's happening in same thing happened in Western North Carolina. I don't specifically know, Chelsea, you might know like what specific prison or jail what happened in, but yeah, is DeSantis mobilized the slavery basically to start filling sandbags, and they were just abandoned in Tennessee and North Carolina to die.
Yeah. And I think the big thing about the North Carolina, so I know Buncombe County Jail was catching a lot of heat because like Buncombe County doesn't have running water and doesn't have power. And so even if the jail itself didn't flood, like they essentially were like, oh, okay, well, you're just shit out of luck. Like we're just going to leave you in here alone with no power, no running water, like whatever food you had in your cell last you. And then we're going to be mobilizing everyone to do search and rescue efforts, which is important. But in the meantime, like y'all are probably going to die. Just good luck with that. And to just go back to what I said about like the intensifying criminalization of poverty and poorness and homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I also don't care why you're in jail, because I know that our prison industrial complex and our society right now criminalizes people for not upholding the status quo, right? And like for not being rich enough, for not being white enough, like not in different words, that's why we criminalize people. And so then to just say they are disposable, well, if we are without a home and they're saying it's illegal to sleep in a tent in public places, then you and I are going to be disposable now. And how many people are without a home because of this hurricane?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one big snowball.
Yeah. And they abandon people in prisons, and they abandon people in hospitals. And it's the same thing that happened like I said, we're definitely going to have to do an episode on Katrina because there's so much stuff that people don't realize that fucking happened. Like there's a huge ethical and moral debate of what happened at that hospital when they euthanized patients that were, they were on breathing machines and the power went out. Like, what are you going to do? The prisoners that were left behind, like the Danziger Bridge incident, like all that stuff happened then. It's like repeating itself in North Carolina with these militia groups and the prisoners having to work and the prisoners being abandoned and the hot people having to be evacuated from the roofs of hospitals. Like it happened 20 years ago, and it's still happening now. The government still can't get its fucking shit together. And that's when people like, Chelsea, you're talking about like you and others, and then Kai talking about helping it. Like people have to go and fucking help each other because, at the end of the day, no one's coming to fucking save you. We saw that with Katrina. We saw that in Puerto Rico. We're seeing it now. God knows, like when all is said and done from Helena, like how many people are going to be dead from this? Like how many towns are never going to rebuild? How many people are going to have to be internally displaced? Refugees, or I don't know what they call it when it's a domestic thing, but like, it's just gone. Like, and it's just going to get worse. Like it's not going to get better, and because they're not fixing climate change anytime soon. Like it's not going to get better, sadly enough. So get your ham rate, like joke about ham, but get fucking ham raters, get water filters, and get fucking MREs. Shout out to Mr. Speaker who loves MREs. But like,
Well, I would like to. We've been talking for about 2 hours. So we should probably let our poor
yeah,
guests go.
definitely, yeah.
But I do want to finish off. Like, this is not. I'm going to give advice for storm preparedness because I have been through storms my entire life.
Everyone
I was
listen
born
up.
in Florida. I lived in Florida for the first 21 years of my life, and I have come back almost every hurricane season. Okay, I've been through storms my entire life, and
she loves this shit.
when I give when I
Kai is
give
a fucking alligator.
Storm chaser.
My name means
Kai in the
running
sky.
wind, and that is the term for a storm.
Kai
Ooh,
is a hurricane.
your lore.
This just got
Kai.
real meta.
Holy shit. That's why that's why Orlando is safe, because Kai was there and blew the storm away. That's what they were talking about, that burial ground in Tampa that moved the hurricane, and white people were like, oh, that's fucking stupid. I was like, man, shut the fuck up. Nothing you've done fucking protected people from hurricanes.
Right.
If the Seminole tribe of fucking Florida wants to protect fucking people from hurricanes, fucking great, because white people aren't fucking doing it.
Anyway, Kai was
And the people that originally lived in Florida, so all of the indigenous tribes pre the Seminoles and the Miccosukee, and the Seminoles and Miccosukee knew how to build their infrastructure to deal with storms. That's why you build raised floors. That's why you build with airways through your buildings. Anyway, when I give this advice on hurricane preparedness, I'm not saying this is like, oh, if you don't do this, then you're stupid. Like, no. Almost, we are learning now that almost nobody anywhere around the Gulf of Mexico knows if they're going to be the ones who get the next storm, right? So the way that I have always prepared for a storm, and now that I am kind of the de facto head of my household when I'm back here in Florida, you should have cash, have at least $100 in cash, because like Chelsea was talking about, if your internet and if your power is knocked out, it's going to be cash or it's going to be trading. And for the most part, trading doesn't kick in until a few days, because then they're realizing, oh, like nobody has cash. So have cash on hand. Make sure that you get full tanks of gas before the storm takes place. In fact, I got my full tank of gas the Monday before the storm hit on Wednesday night. Nelson, what the fuck are you doing?
He's showing us his
showing me coins and
preparedness kit.
Cash and fucking bullets. Let's go.
Ready for the apocalypse.
My dad does,
baby.
My dad does, in fact, make sure that he has ammo pre-hurricane. I am not the one who deals with the guns.
One of my friend's husbands bought $200 worth of ammo, and it just rained real hard. Like,
I gotta shoot the rain, brother. And
people did buy a
rain's
bunch of
coming to
toilet
get
paper
me.
here.
All them looters are
going to
come for my stash of canned goods.
Them looters gonna come for my ham
My
radio,
Cheetos and my Zen pouches.
Here's me thinking that, like, oh, if we need ammo, it might be to shoot gators that get close to the house, shoot snakes that get close to the house. Maybe if we have to hunt for food, maybe that. No, it's the looters. That's what you got to worry about, is the looters who are coming for my 60-year-old house with like a barely functioning electrical
my crate
system.
of Monster energy drinks in my Zen pouches, my Black Rifle coffee, brother.
Brother.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right. So you need gas, you need cash. You should have dry food. Now, a lot of foods that, like MREs and things like that, they require water. You need to rehydrate your food, and you're not sure if you're going to have enough water. So MREs are useful, but like stuff that you get at camping stores, a lot of that requires hot water. And if you don't know if you're going to have electric, how are you going to make hot water? So if you can have dry food, that's like cereal bars, crackers, things that you can prepare without water, and as much water as you can comfortably have available. And like Nelson was saying, those filters, like those life straws and things like that, that's if shit's getting real, those are useful. You need batteries, as many batteries as you can really get a hold of. I have a stash of like 30 AA batteries and 8 D batteries for the big lights, and candles. And if you buy candles, like emergency candles, the easiest way that I can tell you, if you have the money to pop for them, get the votives that are already in glass. Because if you buy emergency candles, you're going to have to find a safe way to hold them. What's that, Nelson?
You froze. I was like, they got Kai for giving out this information.
Anyway, if you get the candles, make sure that they're in glass containers already, because if you have emergency candles that you have to like self pour into a mug or something, that can increase your fire chances because those candles fall over quite a lot. And if you're in like emergency situations, you're not always watching out for that. So if your candles are already in glass, that will save you a lot of trouble.
The last thing you need to do is burn down your trailer when you're
Right.
trying to get through a hurricane.
Exactly.
Okay?
And I've had several instances
Right.
where I've had to pop out the
Same.
emergency candles, and they're the normal like stick kind, and then you have to burn them until the wax melts, and then you have to pour wax into something and hope that you seed it correctly. And if you don't seed it correctly, then the wax is going to drip, and it just creates a lot of danger. So if you buy candles that are already in glass, they're much safer. And make sure that you have, if you have a generator, or if you're going to try to use a grill or something like that, make sure that you have fuel. Firewood is a good idea, and lighters. Definitely lighters. If you have like more primitive ways of making fire, like those are good to have too. But we always have like a pack of lighters. So if you need to light your candles, if you need to light firewood or anything like that, that is the best that I can come up with. I've seen a lot of people talk about like, oh, store your documents in like your washing machine and stuff like that. Mark and I have talked about this. I'm not fully convinced by that, because if the water is high enough, it's going to get in that, and you don't know about the water, how safe it is to water if water is coming up from the outside. Like it might be watertight from the inside out, but you don't know
Right.
about from
That's
the
how it's
outside
made, is
in
not
it.
to let water
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what
Also,
I've seen a
when
lot
the-
of people do that. Yeah. They don't put your stuff in your washing machine and your dishwasher, right? Because it's
Just get it
designed
safe.
to keep it in, not out. Just put it up on a shelf, or like put it in the attic.
We've
Or-
always had metal lock boxes that we keep
Yeah.
our important documents in, so that you know where they are and you can move them quickly if you need to. Grabbing a prepared metal lockbox is way easier than searching for something, especially if you're in a quick get out situation.
Or you can just let your documents get destroyed, then no one knows who you are, and you can start a new life
I was
somewhere
going to say,
else,
if the
brother.
Then
world
you can be a
is
sovereign
burning,
citizen.
you're not going to need any of that shit. So
I will add to what Kai said. Your Walmart camping section is actually really fucking good. I'm not gonna lie. Walmart sucks. Their camping section is phenomenal. It is, you can get fucking anything to survive the apocalypse in the Walmart camping section. With that being said, do not come to my Walmarts in Alabama and take my camping supplies. But like water, you can get waterproof matches, you can get like batteries, you can get hand crank radios, you can get Coleman, get tons of Coleman stove. That's a really good thing. Get yourself a Coleman fucking
The
stove,
camping
right?
stoves.
And get the
Mhm.
camping stove and get the
Mhm.
Coleman propane. What, that shit's fucking great too. You can get so
which
many.
we're still, we are actively like needing those right now. So
Yeah.
if anyone is listening to this and wants to like ship us some camping stoves to Western North Carolina, let me know.
Yeah.
All right. Continue. Sorry.
Another thing is the life straws and the filters are very, very good. However, they do not prevent against, like, they're good, but they're also like viruses and bacteria that sometimes will get through. So if you can boil your water, that's great. But
Yeah, don't
if
get
you,
Giardia.
yeah, don't get Giardia, don't get fucking, whatever, don't shit yourself to death. But the lives, they are good. They will work in a survival situation. Yes, and you need water. Please use the life straws. And I forgot the other one they have. They can connect in the water bottles. They come with pouches. They're fucking great. Another thing you can do in a pinch, if you don't have one, you fireproof matches are really good. If you take regular matches, dip them in wax and make them fireproof. But I mean, waterproof. Fireproof matches, but waterproof matches, you could dip them in wax, ready matches and that, and they'll be waterproof. Iodine tablets are good in a pinch to disinfect your water. If you're desperate, iodine plus the life straws, you should be fine if you can't boil your water. Another big thing, Kai has mentioned this before, and I'm going to reiterate it again. If you have a generator, number one, please do not let it run inside your house. Okay. You will die from carbon monoxide poisoning. Number two, do not plug your generator into your house to try to run your house, because the power from that will go back through the lines and it will shock a lineman. Plug stuff into the generator. Do not plug your house into the generator. Plug your refrigerator into the generator. Your freezer, stuff that you absolutely need, plug that into the generator. Do not plug your house and a fucking 220 volt into the fucking generator to try to run your house, it'll end up electrocuting a lineman or running power back through the lines to shock somebody trying to fix shit, right? So just plug your essentials into the generator. Please run it outside. So many people die every year because they run their generators in their homes and they die from carbon monoxide poisoning. So generator outside, it needs air, right? Do not run it inside so you can breathe. Fucking plug your stuff into it. Do not plug your house into it. And, yay. The simple stuff will keep you alive, right? In the words of Mark, don't get Giardia.
Yeah.
Yes. And
You
just to
don't
add,
want to have diarrhea. You survived the hurricane and you saved your family, but then you have diarrhea and die.
The only
Yeah.
one
It's not a good
the only
look.
one here that can get through
there's
that
no
is
dignity
me.
at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a win,
So
Nelson. Proud of
that's
you.
thank you. I have been dealing with this issue my entire life. Let's fucking go.
We
Anyway,
learned
so
a
yeah.
few
Let's please
lessons
let
in my
Chelsea
day.
complete. Let Chelsea complete her thought, please.
No, I
Go.
was just going to add to what y'all had shared. Like for folks who, I would say the number one thing that I would encourage people to do is like, you do not have to like your neighbors, but know who your neighbors are. And like, I have a friend in West Virginia who lives on a mountain with Prepper Dave, and they're like the closest people around each other. And Prepper Dave is hardcore conservative and my friend is an abolitionist, but like they exchange numbers and they know that if shit were to go down and they couldn't get off the mountain for some reason, like they're all they have. And so they don't have to be best friends. They don't have to hang out all the time, but they do know enough about each other to be able to be like, I got you, you got me if shit really goes down. And so that's one thing that I would encourage everyone to like get over your petty bullshit.
Agreed.
Like we can find a million reasons to hate each other and we cannot survive without each other. So get over it and start building community with people, whether or not you love them to death. The other thing, just like practically speaking, I would say if devices are accessible, have a few of those cheap ass power banks and pre-charge them before the storm hits, because that's another way. If you don't have a generator, you can keep shit charged. There's also a lot of solar powered devices themselves. There's like flashlights that are solar powered. There are like chargers that are solar powered. And so then if you don't happen to have any batteries, you can still get through a few days of challenging times. And then something that my grandparents taught me that like, especially in situations like this, where if there's no running water, you not only need to be able to find drinking water, but you need to be able to find non-potable water too, for things like flushing the toilet. And just general everyday practices. So fill up your bathtub before the storm, like plug the bathtub, and then you just have a full bathtub of non-potable water for everything that you need. You can also save like milk jugs and like those big Arizona tea jugs, whatever you got. And then you can fill those
Milos.
with water too. Yes, exactly. So those are, and if your water is not drinkable, please also do not use it to wash your dishes or brush your teeth. You can also end up dying by shitting yourself that way. So protect yourselves.
Yeah. Real quick, one last thing to piggyback off what you both said. I have a mutual that is in the Tampa area, and her and her family are going on 6 days without electricity and water, right? And trees are down, etc. She's obviously like more left-leaning leftist. The people that are coming through with tractors to help move shit are Trump supporters, and they're all getting along to help each other out. Like, granted, yes, we might not agree on everything. Obviously, if they're people that are going to be shitty in the time of fucking disaster, they're fucking shitty in general. But I would say for the most part, people put politics aside and help each other out. Like she was saying, like, this dude is a fucking 100% MAGA, but he's coming through and asking how we are with this tractor and pushing the fucking trees aside to make the roads passable for the golf carts at least. So, at the end of the day, yeah, you're probably going to deal with shitty militia folks, but they're few and far between compared to like your fucking neighbors that you may disagree on politics, but when shit hits the fan, you
Also, you can
kind of have
lie.
to work together. Yeah, you can lie too.
Like, you don't have to
brother,
be like,
tell you what, brother.
who are you
Hell
voting
yeah.
for?
Hey, you
Like,
got my vote for Trump, brother. What?
yeah, like you're allowed to lie. No one's gonna get you.
Yeah, all Mark has to do is flip up that septum piercing, put his a camo hat on, he fucking blends in real good, brother. Tell you what. Hell yeah, Chelsea got a camera hat. Kai, you got
I've
one.
been working on my
you got a hat?
redneck Antifa look, y'all.
Hell yeah,
I
bro.
don't have a camo hat, but I do have a Bass Pro hat.
Fucking roll damn time. We all
Fair
get
enough.
matching. We get matching bussy shirts, and we're fucking ready to go. All
No,
right.
that's they're gonna know. They're
On
gonna
that
get you.
note, shut up, Mark. On that note, all you see is just the top of your head, Mark. You're just a hair piece right now talking.
I'm gonna keep my comment to myself.
Oh, I don't have hair. Yeah, I know. Fuck you.
Yeah,
Anyway, you son
that's
of a
the
bitch.
gist.
Fuck you. Anyway, Chelsea, real quick, thank you so much for coming on. All right, very important. Where can people find you and where can people donate? And then also please send me those links. I'll put them in the show notes. But real quick, where can people find you? What do y'all need and where can people donate?
Thank you. Yeah. Best way to find me right now is on Instagram, Rednecks Rising. It's like the only thing I have capacity to keep updated regularly. I am distributing mutual aid funds in the form of cash, so folks can find Venmo information on there to contribute to that. But there's a lot of other incredible organizations doing mutual aid work. ROAR, WNC, which stands for Rural Organizing Against Racism, I think. They are also great folks to donate to. And then Beloved Asheville, who typically does like outreach with our unsheltered neighbors already. So they're really prioritizing the folks who are typically overlooked in these kinds of times. And then if folks are looking to support like our migrant farm worker neighbors and undocumented neighbors, I strongly recommend donating to Poder Emma or SEMA. And I'll send you those links. All of those folks are on Instagram. There's a great mutual aid network. And another way to prepare yourself for a storm, speaking of, Mutual Aid Disaster Relief is an incredible organization that I will just say it's decentralized. It's very aligned with our values, mostly a bunch of anarchists. And I went from having literal breakdowns every day because it felt like there was so much and I didn't know where to start and was just trying to survive to feeling like, oh shit, we got this because of Mutual Aid Disaster Relief and they're a national network. And so, whether it's shit hitting the fan in Western North Carolina or Milton coming in to Florida, like it allows us to build community beyond state lines so that once we're past phase one of our recovery and we've still got resources to share, like we can continue to support each other and like extend those resources down to Florida for their phase one of recovery, et cetera. And so going back to plugging in with community, like surrounding yourselves with people who are prepared is another way to prepare yourself. And there's a lot of really great resources on their website. And you can also donate to them. They've been making great, like big purchases for us of generators, of heavy equipment like the chainsaws, et cetera. So what we need right now, we're really entering phase two of this. We worst possible fucking timing. It's they're calling for snow. We had frost last night. So now you've got all of these people living in the fucking woods who don't have power, and we're going into winter. So at this point, we're looking for essentially camping equipment, like Nelson was describing. We really need, there's these heaters that run on propane and we are looking for those. We need the camping stove so people can actually cook out there. We did a huge run of warm clothes, like coats, hats, gloves, etc. And we still need generators. We still need a lot of fuel to keep those generators running. So all of that kind of stuff, you can follow me on Instagram, and I do try to post a daily update of like what we need because it does literally change moment to moment. Like 2 days ago, people were saying, do not bring us any clothes. And then today they're like, please send us every coat that you can find in the Southeastern United States. So we're in a moment where the needs are rapidly shifting, but we're also like moving with the flow. And so if you can follow the groups on the ground that are doing the work, which is I'm just one person in this incredible network that's doing a lot of great things, then you'll find out how you can plug in to support us. I'll also say that if you're like remote and you're listening to this from like California or Pennsylvania or wherever, and you're like, wow, I feel like I want to help, but I don't have money and I can't make a trip down there, whatever it is, Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, like created a literal switchboard for us where people can SMS text for help if there's nothing else that they can get access to. They can also fill out a form. And so we have remote folks who are supporting us by like working dispatch to help with crews coming in and send them to the people who need help, because this is a massive undertaking. I don't know if folks can understand like the scope of this, but We really do need help like that too. So not just stuff, but like your time and your energy. And you'll be learning a lot in the process if you wanted to plug in a way like that.
And most importantly, ham radios.
Yes. Get yourself a ham radio so you can catch us next week.
Yeah. All right. Shit, I don't have the fucking thing. All right. Yeah, what's left of the South? We believe the South will rise again. This time for the right reasons. Those bring worker, yeah, all that good stuff. Anyway, thank you all Patreon subscribers. Thank you, Kai and Mark, for putting up with me. Thank you, Chelsea, for coming on. We really hope that people listening donate. We hope that you guys get what you all need, and we definitely keep each other safe. And even though the rest of the country thinks we're all just a bunch of stupid racist assholes, we're not. We're good people. This is what the podcast is all about. This is what your podcast is all about. And if you want us to rot and die every natural disaster, go fuck yourself. Because we're gonna take care of ourselves. So, Mark, your AirPods died. So you have no way of signing us off. You're just doing the finger guns. Kai, do you wanna send us off with wisdom?
Uh,
How the fuck do I end this thing with the hold on?
you mess with the bison,
there
get
you
the
go.
horns.
Tatonga Kai, let's fucking go.